Yes, my name is Paul Gallagher.
For the court reporter, would you mind spelling your last name?
Gallagher.
Mr. Gallagher, do you presently work?
As a police officer, I'm retired.
When did you retire?
August 31st, 2024.
When you retired, what department were you working for?
Canton Police Department.
How many years had you worked for the Canton Police Department upon your retirement?
I was credited with 32 years, 8 months of service.
Did you have a particular rank when you retired?
Yes, I was a lieutenant.
I want to go back to the beginning of your law enforcement career and share your background with the jury. When did you begin your career in law enforcement?
I became a permanent intermittent police officer in Canton in 1992. What a permanent intermittent police officer is, it's basically a part-time police officer. You're required to attend a 16-week part-time academy. Your duties include regular patrol duties that a regular police officer would do, but you're only utilized during special events, short staffing, and you're allowed to work paid traffic details.
Did that status change at some point?
It did in 1994.
1994, were you a patrolman?
Yes, and that required me to attend a full-time 18-week police academy.
In addition to the police academy, did you continue your training over the years?
Yes, I did.
Can you share with the jury some of the training that you would attend over the years?
Oh, sure. So I did constitutional law. I did interview and interrogation, terrorism, international terrorism, domestic violence, buccal swabbing, and DEA basic narcotics course. And last duties were I did background checks, so I attended background training, and I did internal affairs.
Before I talk a little bit more about your experience over the years and your progress through the Canton Police Department, I'd like you to share with us generally and briefly the structure of the Canton Police Department. The Canton Police Department, how big is it? How many officers are typically employed by Canton at the same time?
We would like to have 45, but unfortunately, we're short-staffed at this time.
At the Canton Police Department, is there different ranks?
There is.
And what are they?
They are patrol, sergeant, detective sergeant, lieutenant, deputy chief, and chief.
Given the size of Canton, is it a small department or a typically large department for that size?
I would say it's a medium-sized department.
Is Canton, do you receive traffic from other areas nearby?
We do.
Is Boston part of the crossroad through Canton at times?
It is. Route 138 runs from Boston, and it goes all the way down to the South Shore through Brockton, Taunton, etc.
Other cities or towns nearby that bring traffic through Canton as far as law enforcement is concerned?
They do, and other states. 95 runs through Canton as well and brings up traffic from Rhode Island.
For a relatively small town, is Canton a busy police department given all the crossroads and intersections?
It can be very busy at times.
You mentioned in Canton that there are different ranks. You started as a patrol officer.
Yes.
Did that change at some point?
It did.
When?
July of 2001, I became a detective.
Did you have any particular or special training to become a detective?
I started attending how to dust for fingerprints. My focus was narcotics. I had several narcotics classes.
Did you engage in those type of investigations on behalf of Canton?
I did.
Did you work with other agencies?
I did in 2005. I started working with the Drug Enforcement Administration in 2006. I was assigned as a task force officer for the DEA, initially out of Worcester Tactical Diversion Squad, which their mission goal was to eradicate OxyContin and oxycodone distribution at that time. It was during our oxycodone phase. In 2008, I was moved to Boston Division, and there we focused on all narcotics, not just oxycodone, heroin, cocaine, etc.
How many years did you spend as a detective before you received your next promotion?
Approximately 15 years.
What happened next in your career as far as progress?
I took the sergeant's exam, and I became a sergeant.
In order to become a sergeant, do you have to pass an exam?
An exam and an assessment, yes.
Is that enough to become a sergeant, or is there another process you have to go through?
That's where they rank you after the exam and the assessment.
What year did you say you became a sergeant?
I became a sergeant in 2017.
Was that your first supervisory position?
Not actually. I also worked as an officer in charge, which you're not technically a sergeant, but when there's no sergeant to fill the shift, they'll use experienced officers to work as a sergeant, and you receive sergeant's pay.
How long did you work as a sergeant for at the Canton Police Department?
I worked as a sergeant for 1 year till 2018, and I was promoted to detective sergeant.
As a sergeant, did your duties change or expand from that of detective?
I was still assigned to the Drug Enforcement Administration at that time.
And you just shared a year later you were promoted to lieutenant. Did you have to take and pass an exam for that?
That was detective sergeant, and I did not have to pass a test for that.
Did your duties and responsibilities expand when you became lieutenant?
Yes, I was brought out of the DEA to work in Canton specifically.
Were there other lieutenants on the Canton Police Department when you worked as a lieutenant?
I became a lieutenant in 2021. At the time, there was 3 other lieutenants.
Were there any other officers above lieutenant at that point?
There was a deputy chief and a chief.
In 2022, January, were you a lieutenant?
I was.
Your duties and responsibilities, do they include actually going to scenes, or was it purely supervisory?
It was supervisory, but we were expected to respond to scenes.
What do you mean by that?
Our chief expected a supervisor on scene at all times, at all scenes.
Even if there was a ranking supervisor like a sergeant, were you still as a lieutenant expected to go to scenes?
Oh, yes.
Did you do that often?
Yes.
I want you to take us to January 29th, 2022. Were you working the overnight shift from January 28, 2022 into January 29, 2022?
I was the outgoing lieutenant. I did not work into the 29th. I was the last lieutenant to work on the 28th.
In the early morning hours, around 6 a.m., were you on shift or off shift?
I was off shift.
Were you planning on working that morning?
I was planning on working later that day, yes.
Do you remember what the weather was like that early morning?
Yes, there was a nor'easter, which was snow, wind.
Did anything interrupt your plan of working later that day?
Yes.
Tell us what happened.
Shortly after 6 a.m., I received a call from Sergeant Sean Good of the Canton Police Department.
After you received a call from Sergeant Sean Good, were you informed about a situation?
I was.
Were you told any basic details of where and what?
Yes.
Without sharing the actual conversation, where was this situation taking place?
I misunderstood the situation. I thought it was on Meadows Ave in Canton. I later found out through dispatch that it was actually Fairview Road.
When you heard that there was a situation in Canton, did you decide to change your plans about when you would come in?
Yes, I responded.
Why did you respond?
That's the expectation our chief had for us.
When you go into work, do you use a police cruiser or do you use your personal vehicle?
On this particular day, I used a personal vehicle because of the weather.
Was that different than typical?
Yes.
And why would you use a personal vehicle instead of a police cruiser?
It was larger. It was four-wheel drive. It was the only way I probably would have got there to the scene.
After you received the call about a situation, tell us what you did.
I loaded up the car with a tent, and I drove to the Canton Police Department, and I got some winter gear from the office, and I got on the radio and advised Sergeant Sean Good, who was at the scene on Fairview, that all officers were held to further notice.
What does that mean?
They weren't going to be going home at their end of the shift until they were relieved by another supervisor.
Why did you take a tent with you?
Because of the snow, the way the call was described to me was a person possibly not breathing. And if it was an unattended death, I wanted to be able to cover the person.
Why?
Respect.
That tent was a tent from your home, a personal tent?
It was. It was an 8x8 pop-up tent.
You went to the Canton Police Department first before you went to the scene.
I did.
Why did you go to the Canton Police Department first?
I had some winter gear there, including a reflective jacket that I thought would be helpful, given it was dark out. Visibility was very bad.
When you got to the Canton Police Department, did you learn anything from any of your colleagues while at the police department?
The only one colleague at the police department at that time was Officer Kelly Dever.
Okay. After you got your gear at the Canton Police Department, did you head towards Fairview?
I did.
Other than the general description that you had heard, did you know anything about what was going on there?
Just that a gentleman was found unconscious in the snow, possibly not breathing.
You mentioned the term unintended death. What does that mean?
An unattended death is a death where someone dies alone, and you don't know the reason. It doesn't mean there's foul play. In fact, 99% of the time, it's natural causes.
Is there a process for the Canton Police Department when they learn of any death, unintended or not? Is there a process you need to follow?
Yes, there is.
And what is that process?
That's to call the Norfolk County DA's office, their CPAC unit, Crime Prevention and Control. They have jurisdictions over deaths and unattended deaths.
You mentioned a CPAC unit. What type of officers or law enforcement is the CPAC unit?
It's manned by the Massachusetts State Police.
Are you required by statute to contact CPAC or the Massachusetts State Police, even if it's an unintended death?
Yes.
Did you follow that process?
Sergeant Lank followed that process.
Is that one of the officers who worked under you?
Yes, that is correct.
Did you know if Sergeant Lank was at the scene when you were leaving Canton, or did you learn at some point when you got there whether Sergeant Lank was at Fairview?
When I got there, I saw the black Toyota Tundra, which is operated by our detectives there, and then I saw him.
When the Canton Police Department first contacted the Massachusetts State Police or the CPAC unit about the information, did you have an understanding whether or not the Massachusetts State Police were going to respond or not?
They were not responding.
So when you got to Fairview Road, were there any other law enforcement officers other than Canton police officers?
No, there was not.
When you appeared at Fairview Road or arrived, were you the superior officer on the scene?
I was the highest ranking officer.
As you're pulling up to Fairview that morning, what's the first thing you see when you get there?
As I pull up, I see the last of the fire apparatus pulling away. I get out of the vehicle. The first one I encountered was Sergeant Sean Good, who was the shift supervisor.
Did you see any other of your officers there?
I did. I saw Lieutenant Lank further down, and further down I saw two other cruisers, which ended up being Officer Mulaney and Officer Sarif.
Did any of the cruisers or vehicles have lights on?
They did.
Did you hear any sirens?
No, there wouldn't be any sirens.
Why wouldn't there be?
Sirens are used to move traffic. There was no traffic. It was a blizzard. There were no cars on the road. You might see an occasional plow.
Did you ever learn the general area where the person was found?
Yes,
At that time, did you know who the person was?
I did. I knew him by name, yes.
Did someone inform you of who the person was?
Sergeant Sean Good did, yes.
Okay. And who was the person that you learned was on the ground?
John O'Keefe.
Had you known John O'Keefe?
I knew of John O'Keefe. I had never met John O'Keefe.
When you first arrived at Fairview, was Mr. O'Keefe still on the ground?
He was not.
Was he at the scene?
He was not.
So when you got to the scene at Fairview, Mr. O'Keefe was already gone?
Yes, he had been transported to the hospital.
So did you ever firsthand see exactly where Mr. O'Keefe was lying when he was found?
I did not.
Did anybody point out to you the general area?
Yes.
Did you have a chance at that point to, well, obviously you didn't have a chance to examine or look at Mr. O'Keefe. Did you have a chance to look in the general area where you were told he was found?
I did.
Tell us a little bit more about the weather now that you're standing outside Fairview Road. What's the visibility like? What's the temperature like? What are the conditions like?
So it was terrible. It was blizzard-like. The wind would blow in your face. It would change directions. The snow was an icy snow. In the wind, you had to actually talk loud to be heard. Somebody right next to you, and it was your typical New England blizzard, basically.
At this point, did you have any position as you assessed the area, whether this was a criminal investigation?
When we had no crime at that time.
When you were there, were you looking for anything?
Yes, I was examining the scene.
Okay. At that point, did you have any reason to start a criminal investigation?
Not at that time, no.
When you learned that Mr. O'Keefe was found outside, did you go look at the particular area?
Yes.
Can you describe the area that was shown to you where Mr. O'Keefe was found?
Sure. It was on the left side of the property of 34 Fairview. You could see where first responders and witnesses and police officers had walked up to the area. It was by a flagpole on the property line of number 32 Fairview.
What was the lighting condition at that point in that area?
It was dark. It was sun was coming up, but due to the weather and the cloud cover and the snow, its visibility still was not great.
Were the law enforcement vehicles providing any light for the area?
No.
How about the house? Was there any bright lights coming out of the house illuminating that area?
I didn't see any lights, window lights on. There may have been an exterior, the door light at one or two houses.
In addition to the law enforcement officers that were there, did you see any civilians when you got there?
No, there were no civilians there.
While you were outside looking at the area, did any civilians ever come out?
No, not at all.
Any civilians ever come out of 34 Fairview?
No.
How about next door, 32 Fairview? Did you ever see any civilians come out of that address?
Nobody ever came out of the house.
Across the street, is there homes across the street from 34 Fairview?
There is.
Did you see anybody come out of either one of those houses?
Did not see anybody come out of those houses.
When you were outside and you were shown the area where you were told Mr. O'Keefe was found, did you try to do anything regarding that area to identify the area itself?
I'm sorry, can you ask that again?
Yes. The area where you were told Mr. O'Keefe was found, did you try to do anything around that area to identify the area?
Well, it was marked out with crime scene tape at that time, and what I saw was pink blood, and it was in a circular pattern.
Was the crime scene tape holding up at all?
No, it was not. It was blowing wildly in the wind, and at one point, it was actually blowing in. It was triangular, and it was actually blowing into the crime scene.
Was the tape helping at all?
No, it was not.
Was there any use putting a tent up at that point?
No, there wasn't, not due to the high winds.
Did you learn whether any of the officers had, at any point before you got there, gone into Fairview Road?
Yes.
Who did you learn went into Fairview Road?
Both Sergeant Good and Detective Sergeant Lake went into Fairview Road.
Did you know how long they were inside for?
Objection. I'll allow it. Did you know that?
I did not.
At that point, did you go and speak to anybody in any of the nearby homes?
I did not.
When you were at this scene and you saw what was happening in the weather, did you make a decision to do anything?
Yes.
What did you decide you were going to do?
Since the state police were not responding, I decided to process the area where Mr. O'Keefe was found and try to find out why he had the medical episode he was having.
If you understood this to be a medical episode, and at that point you didn't have any information it was a crime scene, why were you taking the time and effort to process the scene under these conditions?
Because that's what we do. Even the hospital, there could be a reason that there's obviously a reason he's there. I think we had a duty and obligation to check around where he was found and see if there was any explanation to what caused his medical condition.
Did you focus on a particular area when you decided to look around?
I did.
What area were you going to look at?
Where he was, where it was pointed out he was found and where the blood pattern was.
Were you thinking about looking in any other areas around that?
Not at that time.
Why not?
We didn't have any reason to. We only had the area where he was found.
And at that point, did you have any idea what caused his injuries?
We had none.
At this point, when you were pointed or you're looking at the area where Mr. O'Keefe was found, was the area getting covered up at all?
Yes, it was.
With what?
Snow.
How quickly?
Very quickly. I believe it was forecasted to come down to 1 to 2 inches an hour, if I recall.
Did you have any idea how hard the ground was at that point?
It was frozen.
Objection, Your Honor.
No, did you have any idea?
It was frozen.
Objection.
I'll allow it.
How deep was the snow covering that frozen ground?
Approximately 4 inches at that time.
When you wanted to look around the area, did you consider using a rake or a shovel?
I did.
And did you?
I did not.
Why didn't you use a shovel at that point?
I was afraid I would miss something or possibly break something.
What could you break with a shovel?
Anything, glass or anything of that nature.
What was your decision about how you would search that area? What did you want to see?
I wanted to see anything that was possible, whether it was any type of weapon or any type of medical bottle or any reason that he could have come to where he was.
Did you think of a way that you could look below the top of the snow without unresting the scene?
Yes, I did.
And what did you conclude?
Because of the blood, the pink spots I thought might be blood, I thought a leaf blower would be the best method because I have seen it used and to remove light layers of snow, and it can be controlled.
And after having seen that before and making that decision, what was the benefit of a leaf blower over a shovel?
I wasn't going to miss anything with a leaf blower, much better control.
In control, tell us what your intention, what was your hope with the leaf blower?
To clear the area, controlled, slowly, so any potential evidence of what happened to Mr. O'Keefe wouldn't be lost.
Did you have a leaf blower with you?
Did not.
So what did you do?
Sergeant Good volunteered to go get a leaf blower.
Did you remain at the scene?
I did.
And during this time, are you still have no information that it's a crime scene?
We had no information on a crime at that time.
Did Sergeant Good come back with the leaf blower?
He did.
Did you try to get any other items to help you?
Not that I recall.
Okay. When Sergeant Good came back with the leaf blower, did you use it?
I did.
Was it successful?
Very.
Tell us what you did.
I started with low speed and began whisking away the snow. And then I saw how it was uncovering those pink spots were becoming brighter red. So I verified it was frozen or coagulated blood at that time. And so out of the abundance of caution, I decided that that was something we may want to collect.
Why did you want to collect that?
Just out of abundance of caution, DNA. I expected it to be John's DNA. And I wasn't going to get a second chance at it. It was either collect it or never have it.
Were you making quick decisions under these circumstances?
Yes.
Did you ask somebody to get a container to put the coagulated blood in?
I ended up getting the containers.
Where did you get them from?
I got them from Lieutenant Gallagher, who lived in the neighborhood.
Did Lieutenant Gallagher ever come over to the scene?
He did not.
Did he work for the Canton Police Department?
He did.
Why didn't he come over to the scene with you?
Because he originally thought the scene was at 32.
Sustained.
Did you ask him to come over to the scene to help you?
No.
Did you expect him to come over to help you?
No.
Did you prefer he not?
Correct.
So when you get the containers, were they plastic cups?
Yes, they were red Solo cups.
And what was the purpose of using the red Solo cups?
They were plastic. They weren't going to leak. They weren't going to get soggy. They were large. I needed a small sample. My thought was because it was frozen or coagulated, that we could collect it, transport it, and transfer it to the crime lab, who could extract the DNA however they saw best fit.
Does sometimes the crime lab test evidence and sometimes not?
Of course, yes.
Is that your decision?
No,
You were telling us about the leaf blower. Does it serve to excavate the area?
it did.
Did you begin that process?
I did.
And when you did that, did you try to memorialize it?
Yes, I did.
How did you do that?
I had Sergeant Good videotape it.
Why did you have Sergeant Good memorialize your efforts to excavate the area?
I thought someone may wonder why I decided to use a leaf blower, so I wanted to demonstrate its effectiveness.
I'm going to move to introduce two videos that council has.
So there's no objection to these videos, right?
No objection.
Exhibit 51.
Thank you. With the court's permission, can I show the jury the videos?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, can we show number one, please? Could you, Ms. Gilman, stop at the end of the video so it's a still frame? That's good right there. Sir, who's the person holding the leaf blower?
That is me.
Did the leaf blower work as you had hoped?
It was great.
You see other footprints around that area.
Correct.
Do you know how those footprints got there?
Some of them were from first responders. Some of them were for witnesses. The ones up top by the flagpole were for when the officers put out the crime scene tape.
Did officers try to wrap the crime scene tape around the flagpole?
They did wrap it around the flagpole, yes.
I see. And from that vantage point, could you see the side and front yard?
Yes.
Did the side yard have any footprints or evidence that anything was dragged through the side yard?
No, not at all.
How about the front yard? Did the front yard have any evidence that anybody had walked across it or dragged anything across it?
It had one set of prints from Sergeant Lang.
Other than Sergeant Lang's footprints across the front yard, was there any other impediment?
No, not that I saw.
I'm going to ask if we could see the second video, please, Ms. Gilman. Could you stop there, please? You see the end of the leaf blower?
I do.
There's an object just below it at like 7 o'clock. Do you see that?
I do.
Did you discover something in that area?
We did.
What did you discover?
It's a cocktail glass.
Was it, did it have any damage to it?
It did.
Describe that for us.
It was broken on the top.
Could you continue the video, please, Ms. Gilman? Stop, please. There's some red spots. Is that what you identified as coagulated blood?
That is.
Below some of those spots and to the left, there's an area that's not white. It's brownish. Do you know what that is?
That's, I believe, just bare ground.
If we could finish the video, please. Okay. Thank you. Could you have the lights on, please? Did you or any officer at your direction obtain and preserve that broken cocktail glass?
Yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Sir, I'm showing you two photographs. The first photograph, do you recognize what's in that photograph?
I do.
What is it?
It's a, after we exposed the broken, I exposed the broken glass.
Is the broken glass depicted in that photograph?
Yeah, it is.
Is that similar or substantially the same way it appeared to you that morning?
It's exactly how it appeared, yes.
Do you know if that photograph was taken as a still image of the video or not?
I do not.
Okay. Second photograph, can you take a look at that?
That's a close-up of the cocktail glass.
Of the same photo?
It is, yes.
I'd move these two photographs into evidence, please.
Okay, do you want it to be 52 and 52A?
Please, Your Honor.
It's 52 and 52A.
Lieutenant, what was done with that cocktail glass?
It was bagged and seized as evidence.
Was it brought anywhere that morning?
It was brought back to Canton Police Headquarters.
What happens when it gets back to Canton Police Headquarters?
It gets logged into evidence, and it's assigned an evidence number. The officer types in a description of the item. In this case, it was a broken cocktail glass or broken glass. And once he hits the space bar, it automatically generates a property number for it. And I believe in this case, it was 22-18-PR, which means 22 is the year, 2022. 18 is how many pieces of evidence the department as a whole had collected that year so far. And PR, I believe, means property room.
Why is it assigned a particular number?
Everything is assigned a number by the computer.
You said it's brought to the evidence room. Is that a separate or a special place?
So we have two rooms. We have a temporary evidence room, and then there's a permanent evidence room. Only two people have access to the permanent evidence room.
Is there a reason why access to the evidence room is limited?
There is,
Why?
for security.
Even in a police department, the evidence room is limited as far as people who have access?
That is correct.
In the evidence room, is there an officer assigned as an evidence officer?
Not full-time. There is an assigned admin sergeant who is assigned as the evidence officer.
Does anything happen specifically with the evidence? Is it packaged or stored in any particular way?
The glass was put into a locker, I believe, and temporary evidence. And then it's the evidence sergeant's job to retrieve it. But in this case, we were going to transfer it to the state police.
Was it transferred to the state police at some point?
It was.
I'll allow it.
Were you part of the transition of that item to the state police?
I was.
And when was it transitioned and to who?
It was on February 1st, 2022, and it was to a criminalist from
You know
the
who-
Massachusetts State Crime Lab.
Do you know who the criminalist was?
I don't know the name, no.
Did the criminalist come to your department, or did you bring the item to them?
They came to our department.
In addition to the glass, there was plastic cups with coagulated blood.
That's correct.
What did you do with those cups?
Those were placed in temporary evidence and placed in a refrigerated unit.
To carry them from Fairview to the police department, did you hold the actual cups, or did you put them in something?
Nope, they were stacked in a bag.
Objection, Your Honor. Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow it.
What type of bag?
It was a craft paper bag. In this particular case, we utilized a Stop and Shop bag.
Is that any different than a bag from the police department?
This made of the same paper, craft paper, the same size and dimension, other than Stop and Shop and evidence and probably price. They're basically the same bag.
Why did you use one of those rather than a bag that said evidence on it?
I don't know where that bag came from. I was in a personal car. Sergeant Lank was in a Tundra. If that bag is upside down, you wouldn't know it didn't say evidence on it. So I'm not sure where that bag came from.
And the plastic cups, do you know what happened to those?
Yes, they were turned over to the criminalist as well.
Where did you store them before they were turned over to the criminalist?
Temporary evidence in a refrigerated.
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow it.
Temporary evidence in a refrigerator.
Is the refrigerator part of the temporary evidence area?
It is, yes.
Did you bring that piece of evidence, the broken glass, with you today?
Yes.
With the court's permission, I'd like to approach the witness. Handing you a box, gloves, and some scissors. Let me ask you about that box. It has red tape on it. Why?
It's a secure and transfer of custody.
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going around. Okay.
Lieutenant, before you opened the box, were you one of the officers that discovered that broken glass?
Yes.
Did you personally bring the glass from Fairview to Canton?
No.
Do you know who did?
Yes.
Who?
Detective Sergeant Lang.
Sergeant Lang?
Yes,
When you went back to the station, you said that the evidence was then put into an evidence locker. Did you place it in the evidence locker?
I don't recall.
And then inevitably, it was transitioned to somebody from the forensic unit?
That's correct.
Were you personally there when it was taken from the evidence locker and given to the person from the forensic unit?
Yes, that was me.
Did you have a responsibility and role in that process, or were you a passive observer?
I had an active role. I was the chain of custody. I was turning it over to the criminalist, to the state police lab.
After that glass was given to the criminalist, did you ever have possession of it again?
Never.
Did you ever package it or touch it again in any way?
No, never.
Did you ever process it in any way?
No.
Did
That's
you
not.
put it in that box and tape it up yourself?
No.
Okay, I'm going to now ask you to open the box, please. Is there an item in that bag?
There is.
Would you please open the bag and show us what's in that bag? Thank you. If you could put it back in the bag and the bag back in the box, please. Lieutenant Gallagher, does that appear to be the same item that you found in the area where John O'Keefe was at Fairview that morning?
Yes, it does.
I'd like to have the box and the item marked for identification, please.
Okay.
To the queue for ID.
Thank you.
When you were looking around the area that was pointed out to you as where John O'Keefe was found, did you expand across the front lawn into the street during your search?
No, we didn't, with the exception of uncovering the 6-foot asphalt berm.
Did you say 6 foot, or is it?
Excuse me, 6-inch.
What's a berm?
It's it's basically a curbing, but it's made of asphalt. It's curved. You probably have seen it. It's asphalt. It's curved. It separates the street from property line.
Why did you clear that piece?
Wanted to see. We were trying to find out why John was having a medical issue, and we didn't know if he could have tripped over a curbing or what turned out to be an asphalt berm and possibly hit his head.
After you made efforts to look in that area, did you return to the Canton Police Department?
I did.
About what time?
It was shortly after 8 a.m.
After you returned to the Canton Police Department, did you receive any information or have a reason to return back to Fairview?
Yes,
About what time?
a little after 9 o'clock.
Why did you go back to Fairview after 9 o'clock?
Sergeant Lank got a phone call that Jen McCabe had more information
And where did you understand Mrs. McCabe was?
at 34 Fairview.
Did you go back to 34 Fairview?
I did.
Did you go with anybody?
I went with Sergeant Lank
Did you travel together or separate?
together.
When you got back to 34 Fairview, outside, what did you do?
We parked in the driveway. We walked up, and next to the garage, there's a side door. I don't know if we rang the bell or not, but Brian Albert, the homeowner, answered the door.
As you walked up to the door, did you have a chance to look around at the doors in the area in front of that side door?
Yes.
Did you see anything out of place?
No.
You've been a police officer at that point for a long time.
Yes.
Do you receive any training in observing areas or people?
Always.
What type of training? What are you told to look for when you're speaking to people?
I've been BOSAR trained, which is behavioral observation, suspicious activity training, and you look for clues when you're speaking to people. Whether they cross their legs, cross their arms, is certain behavioral characteristics.
At this point, did you have any understanding that this would later be a crime scene?
I did, yes.
What happened?
Can
How
you-
did you come to that conclusion?
Oh, not at that time.
Oh, not at that time?
No,
Okay.
not at that time.
When you went into the house, what part of the house did you go into?
I went into the room. It's adjacent to the kitchen, and I stood there with Brian Albert.
Can you describe what kind of room that would be?
Yeah, it was just a typical family room type room. It was not large. It was between the garage and the kitchen.
You met with Brian Albert?
Brian Albert answered the door and let us into the house.
Did you understand what his relationship was to that house?
He was the homeowner.
Did Sergeant Lank walk in with you?
He did.
Did he stay in that living area?
No, he went to the kitchen area and sat down with Jen McCabe.
Could you see the kitchen area from where you were?
I could see a portion of the kitchen area.
Did you see anybody else in the kitchen area with Mrs. McCabe and Sergeant Lank?
There were people in the kitchen area. There was nobody with Sergeant Lank or Miss McCabe.
Could you hear their conversation?
No,
Were you trying to listen?
no,
Were you speaking to Mr. Albert?
I was.
Did you take the time to make observations of him?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow it.
Did you take the time to make observations of him?
Yes,
Did you speak to him?
yes,
Did he speak to you?
yes.
Was there anything about his mannerisms or affect that caused you any concern?
No, it was just a social conversation. There was nothing of concern at all.
Was there anything about it that caused you to hone in or be concerned?
No.
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow that.
No,
Did you get a chance to look around that living area at the
Sure.
items?
I didn't look around, just with my eyes.
Did you get to see that area?
I did.
Did you see anything broken or looked out of place?
No, nothing.
Anything that caused you any type of concern?
Nothing.
When you looked towards the kitchen, did you see anything that looked different or suspicious in any way?
Nothing.
Was the interaction, did it cause you any alarm or concerns?
No.
After Sergeant Lank had an opportunity to speak to Mrs. McCabe and you spoke to Brian Albert, what did you do next?
We left.
Where did you go?
We went back to the police department and were informed that the state police were going to respond to the hospital and that we didn't need to respond to the hospital.
When you heard that the state police was then going to get involved in the investigation, what does Canton do when the state police takes over an investigation?
Well, it was based off of a conversation I had with my chief in the detective sergeant's office.
Was there a decision about Canton's involvement in the ongoing investigation?
There was.
What was that decision?
That we should recuse ourselves from any further investigative interviews.
And why was that?
Because our best detective, his name was Kevin Albert, and he was the brother of the homeowner, and I didn't want any potential bias, whether unconscious or subjective, to be perceived by the O'Keefe's, by the O'Keefe family.
So when the state police got involved and you had the conversation with the chief, was that the end of your efforts towards this?
It was the end of our efforts until, I helped facilitate during the search warrant on February 1st.
And so at some point, was the defendant's Lexus brought to the Canton Police Department?
It was.
Was it put in a particular area at the Canton Police Department?
It was.
What area?
The Sally Port.
What's a Sally Port?
Sally Port is where, when we have an arrest, we bring our prisoners in. It's basically a extra large garage. It has 4 doors. They're numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. We typically go in door 4 and pull towards door 3. Door 4 is lowered, and then prisoners are walked into the booking area, which is also secure. The exterior doors to the Sally Port can only be opened by the dispatch council.
When crime scene services came to look at the car, was that the same day, the 29th, or later time?
No, it was February 1st.
Did the Lexus remain in the Sallyport area from the 29th until February 1st?
Yes.
When representatives from the crime lab from the Massachusetts State Police came on February 1st, who provided them access to the Lexus?
I was one of the people there that was there. I don't know if I provided them direct access, but I certainly would have. And I assisted them if they needed things. That's when the chain of custody, the exchange of custody for the blood samples and the glass occurred as well.
And during their processing of the Lexus, were you there for parts of it?
I was in and out, yes, but I did not partake.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, please. Mr. Jackson, is this video up there yours, or is it the Commonwealth's?
Not mine. Or is it?
All right.
May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher, you have already established that you were at the scene on January 29th, early morning, January 29th, 2022. We've seen the video of the leaf blower, correct?
That is correct.
So you were integral to at least an initial search of the scene, which recovered the drinking glass that you've shown us, as well as some of the blood byproduct that you've talked about.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. You were the ranking person on the scene. You've already described that.
Yes, that is correct.
There were also several other officers from Canton PD who were there with you.
Yes, there was 4 other officers, yes.
Can you just name those other officers?
Yeah, Detective Sergeant Lank, Lank, Detective Sergeant Good, Goode, Officer Mullaney, Mullaney, and Officer Saraf, Saraf.
Okay. When you initially, let me back up and ask a different question. Given the fact that you were the ranking officer, the way that it works in a police department is everybody sort of reports up the chain of command, correct?
That is correct, yes.
So they would have all reported up to you in some particular.
That's correct.
And then, of course, you report to I think you're the deputy chief, and then the deputy chief reports on up to the chief, correct?
That is correct.
You were involved in not only the exposing of some of that blood byproduct, but also exposing the glass with the leaf blower, correct?
That is correct.
You were responsible for utilizing certain equipment. You chose a leaf blower at the time, correct?
I did, yes.
There was also, I'm guessing, there was also some use of your hands and or the gloved hands with some others to recover some of the items.
Yeah, I didn't use my hands. No.
How did you get the glass into a bag?
That was Detective Sergeant Lank.
Somebody had to pick it up, right?
Correct.
That's what I mean. The use of hands to manipulate some of the evidence, correct?
Yeah, I apologize. I didn't understand that question.
That's okay.
I thought you were speaking about me.
Probably my fault, not yours.
Nope, that's okay.
There was also some plastic cups that we've talked about. We'll talk more about those in a second. Those were utilized as well, correct?
They were, yes.
And you were responsible for the use of those as well.
Yes, it was
So,
my decision, yes.
In terms of the search of the scene, the recovery of evidence, the recovery of biological material, the use of tools to recover those biological materials, all of that rested at least ultimately at the scene on your shoulders, correct?
Yes, it did.
Isn't it true that you weren't interviewed in this case with regard to anything having to do with this case until April 3rd, 2024, correct?
Yes, we can call it an interview. It's when I met with the prosecutor, yes.
And that was about 2.5 years, nearly 2.5 years after this incident, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Michael Proctor, you know that name.
I do.
Who is Michael Proctor?
He was one of the troopers assigned to investigate the case.
As a matter of fact, he was the lead investigator for the case, correct?
I don't know if he was lead or trooper mechanic. I don't know.
As you sit here, you don't know that Michael Proctor was the lead case agent for...
I know he was one of them, yes.
Okay. Do you know that he was the lead investigator assigned to the case?
I don't. I had nothing to do with the DA's office.
Right. I know you didn't have...
I don't know how they assign their cases, counsel. I don't know what you want me to say. I can't say what I don't know.
Mr. Gallagher, I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking if...
I did not know he was lead. I knew he was one of the leads.
Okay.
I believe they do it in a tandem, but I'm not sure.
Okay. He may have had a partner, correct?
That is correct, yes.
But it's not unusual to have a lead case agent, the person
No.
who's responsible for most of the search warrant writing and the memorialization of and documentation of evidence collection and the movement of evidence and booking into evidence, things like that.
That is correct, but I don't know anything about who wrote their affidavits or who logged their evidence in. I wouldn't know that.
You're also familiar with Yuri Buchanan, correct?
I know who he is.
You're also familiar with Lieutenant Tully.
I know, yes.
They're all Massachusetts State Police officers, correct?
Yes, they all are.
Did
yes.
Michael Proctor interview you before April of 2024?
He did not.
Did Yuri Buchanan interview you before April of 2024?
No, he did
Did
not.
Lieutenant Tully interview you before April of 2024?
No, he did not.
Did anybody else from the Canton Police Department, your deputy chief or the chief, interview you formally about your conduct and responsibilities before April of 2024?
I don't understand that question.
Did anybody at Canton PD, separating out Massachusetts State Police,
Correct.
did you sit down at Canton PD and provide an interview with anybody at Canton PD about your conduct at the scene?
What do you mean by conduct?
Going to the scene, collecting evidence, securing evidence, transporting evidence, booking evidence, those kinds of things. Your conduct at the scene, sir.
Yeah, I briefed my superiors, yes.
Okay, other than briefing, was there a formal report written
No.
or a formal interview conducted of you?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. Tell us when you wrote your report about what happened at the scene, memorializing what you did at the scene.
I didn't.
You didn't write a report?
About the scene that day at the scene?
Correct, about this investigation.
I only did the metadata report. I did not write a report at the scene.
You never, in fact, the fact is you never wrote any report about what happened at the scene, correct?
Correct.
You didn't memorialize that in any formal way on Canton PD letterhead to describe what you did and how you did it at the scene.
No.
Normally, when you report to a scene as a first responder, you would be expected to write a report about that, whatever that conduct is.
I'm not the supervisor, no.
What if you're the ranking person at a scene that ultimately turns into a homicide scene?
Well, we don't know it's a homicide scene at this time. We don't even know there's a crime committed at this time. My
Understood.
responsibilities are to make sure reports are written, not to necessarily write the reports myself. I'm the supervisor. It's
Although-
my job to make sure reports are written, evidence is logged, those types of things.
Under ordinary circumstances, you would respond to a scene as a supervisor, and you would oversee what other people are doing, what your
That's
subordinate-
correct.
Can I finish?
Sure.
I don't want to talk over each other.
I apologize.
You would want a supervisor oversee what your subordinate officers, whatever he or she might be doing or they might be doing, you're going to oversee that. But they're the ones actually conducting the investigation or picking up evidence or doing the interviews, writing those things of that nature.
Correct. Detective Sergeant Lake's investigation, yes.
So in that circumstance, you wouldn't be expected to write a report because all of that conduct is memorialized by others subordinate to the supervisor, correct?
Correct.
But in this case, quite the opposite happened. You were the one that was in the video utilizing the leaf blower, correct?
That's correct.
You were the one that actually exposed the drinking glass, correct?
Correct, yes.
You noted the drinking glass and actually called somebody else over to take a look at it, correct?
That's correct.
You directed someone, Sergeant Lang, to pick up the drinking glass and recover it as a potential piece of evidence, correct?
That is correct.
You noted the blood or the coagulation of blood in and around that area, correct?
That is correct.
You noted where you believe the drinking glass was, in other words, what location, if there were grid coordinates, where it would be, correct?
Correct.
And you instructed others to transport that important evidence back to Canton PD to have it booked, correct?
That is correct.
You also secured the plastic containers in which to recover the blood.
That is
right?
correct.
You also directed someone to get a bag to put the plastic containers in and ultimately transport it, correct?
That is correct.
So you would agree with me, Mr. Gallagher, that in this circumstance, you were the centerpiece of the recovery of evidence and the investigation as it was at that time in that limited context. You were the centerpiece of what was happening at the scene, correct?
And I made sure it was documented by Detective Sergeant Lang.
But you didn't find it important enough to write a report yourself.
I think that's poor misrepresentation. There's a person fighting for their life. It was very important.
When you were there at the scene at, what time was it, by the way?
I got there shortly after 7.
Okay, you knew that that person who was fighting for his life had already been transported and was in good care, as best care we can provide at Good Samaritan Hospital, correct?
That is correct.
So certainly you're not excusing away the idea that you didn't memorialize your conduct because you were too busy fighting for someone's life. That's not what you're saying.
No, it definitely is not what I'm
Okay.
saying.
Obviously, reporting to a scene and supervising a scene is one thing, but actually gathering evidence is a whole next level. You would agree with that?
Sure.
Because, just to put a fine point on it, responding to a scene as a supervisor, you want to make sure everybody's doing their duty, but the officer or officers who, for instance, uncover, let's say it's a knife or a gun or some weapon or something like that, actually documenting and picking up that evidence and handling it in an appropriate way, that is all highly, highly technical. It's very important to get it right and memorialize it all, correct?
That is correct.
That's why you're highly trained to memorialize and report everything that you do in that regard in a report that can later be used forensically, in other words, in a courtroom setting, to recreate as best you can with as much detail as you can exactly what you did and how you did it and where it was done, correct?
Sure. Yes.
Officer Lank wrote a report in this case.
Sure.
Did Officer Mullaney?
I believe you did, yes.
Did Officer Seraph?
Yes.
Officer Good? Sergeant
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
But you did not.
I did not.
Who was the first officer to find any potential physical evidence at the scene, be it blood or glass?
I can't answer that. It was not me. I was not the first thing that was spotted was the pink spotting, not the glass.
Okay. Who was the first person to see the glass?
I think it was myself as I uncovered it with the leaf blower.
One of the important things that we've talked about, Mr. Gallagher, is documenting the details of evidence recovery, not just the fact that something was recovered, correct?
That's correct.
So you'd want to know what time of day it was recovered, correct?
Sure.
You'd want to know who was there and who was around when it was recovered, correct?
Yes.
You'd want to know what the item is, the condition of the item, right?
Yes.
You'd also want to know exactly where it's recovered, correct?
Yes.
In other words, as best you can to pinpoint the exact location where an item was found. That
Yes.
could play a huge role in any investigation, be it criminal or otherwise.
It could. It could.
Did you diagram or draw a diagram back at Canton PD or
I did
out
not.
at the scene
No.
about where that glass was found?
No, I did no reports or diagrams.
Did you diagram exactly where you recovered the blood spots that you did recover?
No.
Did you at least, if you didn't write a report, did you at least take notes on a pad about what you were doing?
The conditions weren't, it was pretty hard to take notes at that time, but I did not take notes, no.
At some point, you mentioned a person by the name of Tom Kelleher, Deputy Chief Kelleher.
That's correct.
Who is Deputy Chief Kelleher?
He's the deputy chief of Canton Police.
He was active on active duty at the time? When I say active duty, I don't mean that morning, that hour. I mean just generally.
Yes. He was a lieutenant at that time.
He was someone to whom, as a matter of fact, probably the only person to whom at Canton PD you actually reported, correct? Up the chain of command. He was the only person to whom you reported up the chain of command, meaning he was your direct report.
He was in charge of detectives at that time.
And
yes.
then, of course, the chief would be above him, correct?
Deputy chief and chief.
Okay. When you responded to the scene, Deputy Chief Gallagher did not come out of his house and take over the investigation, correct?
Correct.
That was yours to detail,
That is correct.
at least while you were there.
That is correct.
So can you describe what you did to preserve the crime scene? I'm sorry, to preserve the scene, because at that time you said you did not know if it was a crime scene. Is that right?
That's correct.
What did you do
I
in
mean,
terms of actually preserving the scene for later investigation? What steps did you take?
For later, can you explain later investigation?
So let me take a step back.
Sure.
Have you been trained to preserve scenes?
Yes.
Okay. What's the reason that you want to preserve a scene? What does that mean?
Collect evidence.
Collect evidence and make sure nothing is disturbed, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Civilians can't kind of traipse through or walk through evidence, correct?
That's correct.
You've heard the phrase forensically, evidence in, evidence out. Someone traipses through a crime scene, you bring
Correct.
evidence with you, and you take it back out with you on your shoes or on your feet or your breath or your saliva, whatever it might be.
Very familiar with that, yes.
Preserving the scene is best efforts, is best practices to make sure that nothing is moved, touched, messed with in any way, correct?
That's correct, and that's what was done here.
What did you do? That's my question. What did you do to preserve that scene?
There were no civilians ever to trample through. Were rescue efforts made on Mr. O'Keefe? Yes, that's priority. So rescue workers do go into any type of scene. Medical life-saving measures come first. Once all apparatus was off scene, the original officers put out crime scene tape to mark an area. And later, it was documented, it was photographed, and evidence was collected.
And it was searched by you, at least initially with the leaf blower.
Correct.
Okay. So you were interested in the area that, by the way, I want to clear this up, make sure I'm not mistaken. You described for Mr. Brennan basically where Mr. O'Keefe's body was, correct?
Yes, yes,
You never saw his body in situ. You never saw his body in place.
that is correct.
You were told by Sergeant Lank generally where his body was, correct?
Yes, and Sergeant Lank actually never saw Mr. O'Keefe either.
That's my next question.
Okay,
Sergeant Lank-
and Mr. Good, and Sergeant Good as well.
Right. Sergeant Lank never saw John O'Keefe actually in place, correct?
That is correct.
So you're receiving information from Sergeant Lank that he did not have personal knowledge of, and then you're providing that information later to crime scene investigators who are trying to establish a diagram or some sort of a chart about where that evidence was, where the drinking glass was, where his body was, correct?
No, I never spoke to anybody in that manner about that.
Didn't you ultimately go out to the scene along with others at Massachusetts State Police when they had a drone overhead?
No, you're mistaken. I can clarify it for you if you wish.
Sure.
So on February 1st, after the execution of the warrant, they wanted to go down to the scene. It was Trooper Proctor and somebody from the CARS team, I'm not sure of the name. Once they got down there, I did show them where I was shown John O'Keefe was. They did want to put up a drone, but they could not do it because they were too close to Norwood Airport and because of FAA regulations.
Okay.
And that was the last of my involvement
Okay.
with that. I hope that clarifies things for you.
Forget the drone. I'm interested in the first part, which was you accompanied Trooper Proctor to the
Correct.
scene, correct?
Correct.
There were other members of CARS, C-A-R-S.
I think there was one. Crash accident reconstruction section, I'm assuming.
Okay, so it's a forensic, a member of MSP who does forensic diagrams, correct?
I would say. I don't know if they do diagrams. I don't know what they do.
Or reconstruction of some sort.
Sure, reconstruction of some sort.
So you were there to help provide information about where Mr. O'Keefe's body was found, correct?
And be a Canton police officer present in case any neighbors had come out.
So you were there to help provide information about, or at least you did provide information to them about where Mr. O'Keefe's body was found.
Oh, sure, yes.
Except you didn't see Mr. O'Keefe's body, did you?
No, I did not.
So that was a yes on your part.
It was what I was shown. It's the information I had.
Yeah, it was the information you were told by Sergeant Lang, correct?
Yes,
who also didn't see John O'Keefe in place on the ground at 34 Fairview, correct?
that is correct, yes.
So his would be a guess also, correct?
Well, we're going backwards, so he was told by Sergeant Good and et cetera. So it was information passed along, which is what police officers do.
Right. But the police officer that was out there at the scene, who was helping the reconstructionist establish the formal report, and the CARS report was an officer who not only didn't see where John O'Keefe's body was, you got information about where John's body was from someone who didn't see it either. Correct? Can we at least agree
No.
on that?
You have to go back to the beginning. I didn't understand the beginning of that question.
Sure,
It was very
I'll try it
long.
again. The point is, Mr. Gallagher, you happen to be tapped as the person who is going to assist the CARS folks, the MSP, in creating their CARS,
No.
ultimately their CARS report.
No.
Isn't it true that you accompanied Trooper Proctor and members of the CARS unit to document Fairview Road and the scene of the incident?
Yeah, I thought I explained it could not be done.
Okay.
So
I'm not
I
asking
wasn't,
you-
I only went to show them where Mr. O'Keefe was and in case any neighbors came out. I wasn't there to assist in any documentation at all.
You were there. You know who Brian Tully is.
I do.
Have you reviewed Brian Tully's report?
I have not. You showed me one section of it.
Is it true that what you actually told Brian Tully is that you went with Trooper Proctor, and you're already shaking your head now. I haven't even finished the question.
No.
I got that part wrong? You accompanied Trooper Proctor?
No, what's wrong is I was interviewed by Lieutenant Tully. That was a meeting I had
Okay.
with Prosecutor Lally.
Okay.
Trooper Tully was present. Trooper Tully never asked me any question. I don't recall Trooper
I
Tully
see.
ever asking me a question, sir.
So let me be a little bit more defined. So in Trooper Tully's report, where he reports what you said, you were actually talking to Adam Lally, my colleague sitting up in front.
Correct.
Okay. So now we've got that cleared up. Let me ask you again. Did you say in front of Trooper Tully that you accompanied Trooper Proctor and members of the CARS unit to document Fairview Road?
Meaning they were documenting Fairview Road. It's not clear. The report's not clear. They were going to document Fairview Road, not me.
So you just said something that I want to follow up on.
Okay,
The report's not clear, correct?
that's correct.
So that's an inaccurate report.
I wouldn't call it inaccurate at all. I'm just saying you're misinterpreting the wording.
I see. And I'm misinterpreting it even though I just read it directly from the report?
Yeah, sometimes sentences have different meanings.
Okay.
Yes, you are.
Okay. The reality is you did end up going to the scene, correct?
I did.
And you accompanied, I don't want to use a word that you'll challenge, you went with Trooper Proctor, correct?
I took my cruise into 34
Okay.
Fairview, yes.
You were there at the same time Trooper Proctor was?
Yes.
And you were aware that the CARS team was there so that they could document the scene, correct?
I don't know what the purpose of the drone was. I'm not familiar with that section. I thought I answered that question. I'm not familiar with what they do.
But you do believe that as you sit here, you were there, we weren't. You do
Right.
believe that that's the reason that they were there was to document the scene.
Put up a drone.
Okay.
I don't know what you mean by document. I don't know if it was to photograph, I guess, which if you mean by document photograph, I guess it could, I would agree. If it means take measurements, I wouldn't know.
Okay. Did you tell any of the members of the CARS team where you believed John's body was?
I believe it was Trooper Proctor, but I believe he was there, yes.
Trooper Proctor obviously was not there when John's body was there either, correct?
That is correct,
So
yes.
he would have gotten that information.
From you. That is correct.
So now that's 3 people.
It's probably more, quite honestly, yeah.
Well, I'm just talking
Yeah.
about this report.
Correct.
The CARS report. That's 3 people in line, none of whom saw John's body, John O'Keefe's body, as it lay in the lawn when he was recovered.
That is correct, yes.
And there's no photographs
Of,
of Mr. O'Keefe
oh, no.
at the location.
No, we wouldn't, nobody would photograph somebody undergoing life-saving measures. Wouldn't be appropriate.
There's no video, specifically.
They wouldn't take video of somebody undergoing
there's
life-saving measurements
There's no
either.
body cam.
We don't have body cameras.
There's no dash cam that shows it.
Well, dash cameras would be on the road. Mr. O'Keefe was approximately 8 to 10 feet off the road.
Well, hang on a second. you're not sure where Mr. O'Keefe was because you never saw him.
That's why I used a range, yes.
Right. So you don't know,
I know where the blood was, I know where the glass was.
right. But you don't know if he was 7 to 9 feet off. If he
That's
was
correct.
4 to 12 feet off. You can't say. And then he
I could, only approximately, you are correct, yes.
You did meet with Officer Seraph. You met with all the officers when you arrived at the scene, correct?
Yes,
And Officer Seraph had been there from the beginning of the morning.
yes.
Officer Seraph didn't report to you at that time any statements attributable to my client, did he?
He did not know.
You later went back to 34 Fairview with Sergeant Lank,
That's correct.
and you rode back. Did you ride back to Canton PD with Sergeant Lank or separate cruisers?
Which time? I
I'm
apologize.
sorry. That's a vague question on my part. You went back to 34 Fairview with just Officer Lank, and you described a circumstance in which you went in, you were let in by Brian Albert. He went to the kitchen. You were in the family room or some other place.
Right by the kitchen, yeah.
Right by the
room
kitchen.
off the kitchen, yes.
Okay, so right next to where he was interviewing
That's correct.
Jennifer McCabe.
Yes.
Did you ride back from that meeting with, or that event to Canton PD with Sergeant Lank?
Yes.
And Sergeant Lank didn't say anything to you about his interview with Jennifer McCabe at that time.
I don't recall our conversation on the way back.
Okay. And you didn't write a report about any conversation that you had with Officer Seraph. You didn't write a report about any conversation you had with Sergeant Lank.
No, they're responsible for writing their own reports.
Got it. You did say that let me back up and ask a different question. You testified about a year ago in another proceeding. You talked a little bit about the evidence collection of the biological material, the blood, or I'm guessing at that time, presumed blood. You haven't done any testing.
That's correct, yes, sir.
But you assumed it was blood just because of your experience and it looked like it could be blood on the street.
That's correct.
How far were you from Canton PD? Approximately.
Mile.
A drive.
Mile and a half.
Mile and a half. You had your cruiser with you,
I had my personal vehicle with me.
your personal vehicle. In other words, your ambulance where you could get from point A to point B if you wanted to.
Yeah, I was the scene supervisor. I wasn't leaving the scene.
Okay. But you also had subordinate folks at the scene that you could have dispatched had you wanted to.
Correct.
They all had cruisers.
Yes, they did.
Or personal vehicles, I'm not sure which.
I'm sorry?
Or personal vehicles, I'm not sure which.
I was the only one with a personal vehicle. Detective Sergeant Lank had a Toyota Tundra pickup truck that is not marked, but it's assigned to our detective unit.
So if you wish to, as the ranking officer out of the scene, you could have dispatched one or more of those officers to run an errand, to go do something in furtherance of the investigation had you wanted to.
Yeah, I actually did that.
Okay, you did. What did
Yes.
you do in that regard?
Remember, I sent Sergeant Good to get the leaf blower.
Got it. You also know that Canton PD has evidence collection bags at Canton PD.
Yes.
You also know that they have materials and tools to gather biological material, correct?
We do have swabs, yes.
And those swabs go in little containers to maintain their sanitary nature, correct?
That is correct,
In
yes.
other words, if you see a blood stain, you don't just walk up with a Kleenex that you find on the ground and wipe it up. There's your blood stain. There is a process for gathering that type of evidence, correct?
Sure, if you're looking for DNA, you can use a bloody Kleenex, to your point.
It'd be kind of an emergency.
Yeah, absolutely. My point exactly.
But if you're a mile from the Canton PD,
Yeah,
you could have gone back and done a swab.
could have.
But you didn't.
Didn't want to because of the weather, because you just said because it's an emergency, and we thought it was an emergency there. I mean, the storm was coming down terribly, and I believe if we didn't collect that biological matter, we weren't going to get that biological matter.
But Canton PD was a mile and a half away, 4 or
In-
5 minutes.
In a blizzard,
Still, in a blizzard, look, it's 3 minutes in good weather, probably 4, 5, 6 minutes in a blizzard, correct?
I'm not sure.
So let's call it 12, 15 minutes You certainly could have gone back. If you wanted to, you could have dispatched one of your officers to go back and get swabs and properly collect the blood material. Right?
Sure, sure. And I believed 15 minutes would have made a difference.
And what you did instead is, well, 15 minutes would have made a difference, but you asked Sergeant Good to drive to his house and get a leaf blower.
Yes, and while he was doing that, we were documenting the scene with photographs.
You could have documented the scene with photographs even if you went back and get a swab. What's the difference?
Because we were ongoing. It was ongoing. I wasn't leaving the scene.
I didn't ask you to leave the scene. I didn't ask if you were
I
leaving the scene.
needed the other officers. We talked about scene security. I already let one officer go. I now have 3 left. We're securing that scene.
So you saw pink stains in the snow, correct?
That's correct.
And you said, Officer Good, probably called him Sean, Sarge, go home and get a leaf blower. Right?
That is correct.
Could have said, Officer Mulaney, get your butt over to Canton PD and pick up 10 swabs, correct?
He wouldn't have had access to the swabs.
Oh, so now one of your officers could have gotten swabs, even if the lieutenant, a ranking lieutenant, had dispatched him to go get a swab.
Because he doesn't have access to the BCI, the Office of BCI, where our stuff is kept.
Could you have made a phone call?
No, nobody there would have had access at that time. It was only Officer Dever on the desk.
So you're the only person that could have gotten those swabs?
Sergeant Lang could have gotten them as well.
So Sergeant Lang could have too?
Sure.
But you didn't say that?
No, definitely didn't.
Okay. What you did do, however, is you went to a neighbor's house. Happened to be Tom Gallagher, right?
The lieutenant of detectives, yes.
Right. And Lieutenant Gallagher gave you red Solo cups.
Yes. I asked for plastic or glass containers. He had Solo cups, and I utilized them.
The same kind of Solo cups that we all see at backyard barbecues.
Yep, they hold liquid terrifically.
They're also not sealed, correct?
They are not.
They're also not used normally. I mean, they were here. They're not normally used for evidence collection, correct?
Oh, absolutely not.
And then you decided you needed to transport that very important biological material back to Canton PD for storage and safekeeping, correct?
That's correct.
And why was it important to transport that blood material so quickly? What are the factors that you considered, weighed and balanced, in terms of getting that material back to Canton PD in good condition, sanitary condition?
So a criminalist could extract a proper DNA sample.
What would happen, for instance, if that blood material, I don't know, were contaminated?
Contaminated how?
You tell me. You're the professional.
So DNA is pretty hardy, pretty forensically stable. The only things that are going to harm it are radiation, ultraviolet light, harsh chemicals such as bleach. That's not present here. I wasn't. Then you would have 2 sets of DNA when it's tested, which would benefit you.
Well, depends on whose DNA it is.
That's correct. That's correct.
Right. Yeah, moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
While you were, I'm going to stay on this for a second. So obviously there's a reason why blood swabs or biological swabs are handled with such care. For instance, a DNA analyst is going to put on gloves.
Correct.
Oftentimes they're going to put on a mask, right?
I don't know about that.
Oftentimes they put on goggles. Is that right?
It depends what they're testing.
Right.
Yeah.
But in order to go out and collect something, you'll see CSI, crime scene investigators, in full body suits when they
Sure.
walk into a crime scene.
Yeah, you can.
Because you don't want to contaminate the scene with your own hair off your arm or an eyelash falling into a blood stain, correct?
That is correct.
Right. So there are protocols. I mean, you said just a second ago, Mr. Gallagher, well, it's DNA. Unless somebody pours bleach in it, you're pretty much golden, right? That's not quite the fact, is it?
And that's not quite what I said.
No, it's not quite what you said. You were suggesting that it's hardy enough that it doesn't really matter
No.
if it's contaminated or not. If there's multiple people's DNA, it just benefits everybody.
No, I simply asked what you meant by contamination.
Okay. So it could be contaminated with debris, is that right?
Sure, it can.
It could be contaminated with other people's DNA, is that right?
It can.
It could be contaminated with foreign items, foreign either aerosols or somebody's spittle when they're talking, correct?
Sure.
You contaminated with 1,000 things.
Hypothetically,
Right.
they,
And of course, these solo cups didn't have lids on them, right?
they did not.
They were open.
Yes.
You didn't photograph where you picked up the samples.
No.
You didn't document where you picked up the samples.
No.
So if the samples were in 6, how many solo cups were there?
6.
6 solo cups. We don't know as we sit here where each of those solo cups' contents came from specifically, do we?
Specifically, no.
Okay. Then those solo cups with no lids were placed into a bag, right?
That's correct.
You said on direct examination that this was a brown paper bag, right?
It is. Stop and Shop, I believe.
And you said that that Stop and Shop bag is, other than having the words Stop and Shop on it versus evidence on it, basically the one and the same thing.
Same dimensions, made out of the same materials, yes.
Right. But with an evidence bag, you know exactly where it came from and who's handling it.
Not necessarily.
Comes from a manufacturer
Sure.
whose job it is to secure those bags so that they are not mishandled, so they can have some sort of bona fides that they're clean and ready to accept evidence. In, say, for instance, I don't know, the investigation of a homicide of a police officer.
Okay.
Important stuff, right?
We're not at a homicide of a police officer at this point.
I'm just talking about evidence bags in general. Evidence bags in general. In other words, I'm trying to think of some of the most important investigations around. The manufacturers of those evidence bags manufacture them and send them in a way so that their bona fides, the provenance of those bags, is maintained, correct, and protected.
That's the way they ship them, yes.
Right. And Canton PD pays extra money for those bags for that very purpose.
I'm sure they do,
You
yes.
mentioned almost tongue-in-cheek, look, except for the price,
Yeah.
they're probably pretty close.
Yes.
There's a reason that there's a price difference, right?
What would the reason? What's the reason?
Well, it's not the shop, I can go pay 10 cents
Yeah.
for that bag, because I don't really give a hoot where it's been, or who's handling it. Right? It's got my milk and my eggs in it, really don't care.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how they price it because of how they package it. I don't have any knowledge of
Well,
that.
you're the one that mentioned the price. I'm just
Oh,
trying
no,
to
no,
make a
no.
point.
Yeah, I
There's a
agree with
reason.
you on that.
I'm sorry, we're speaking over each other. Okay.
I apologize.
I'm sorry, Mr. Gallagher, you gotta wait for me.
Yep.
There's a reason. My point is, there's a reason, right?
Yes.
That evidence bags are more expensive because there is a way they're manufactured and they're taken care of, and Canton PD is willing to pay that extra price, like every other law enforcement agency, because of that. Correct? All right. So they're not quite the same, are they?
No.
Those solo cups were placed in the evidence bag uncovered.
Yes.
The evidence bag was then placed in Sergeant Lank's vehicle.
It was closed and Sergeant Lang transported it to his vehicle. Yes.
Okay. When you say closed, you mean the top of it was rolled up?
Correct.
Or folded over?
Correct.
Okay. It wasn't forensically sealed.
Not at that time, no.
There was no evidence tape that went on it.
Not at that time, no.
Matter of fact, the cups were still open and could slosh around.
Uh,
Assume they melted.
yes,
There's liquid blood and liquid water, like
that's correct.
snow.
That's correct.
And you indicated that those were, at least you believe, those were placed in an evidence locker, temporary evidence locker, correct?
No, the blood samples were put in a refrigerated unit.
My mistake. I thought the refrigerator was the temporary storage locker. It's different?
Yes, lockers are not refrigerated. That's where the glass would go into a locker.
Okay. This was placed into an evidence refrigerator.
That's correct.
That was to maintain the integrity of the sample, the biological sample inside the cups, correct?
That's correct.
Do you have an evidence log of that?
I don't know.
You've never seen an evidence log indicating that those were actually put into a refrigerated evidence locker.
I removed them myself, so I know they were in the refrigerated unit
When did you remove them?
on February 1st.
Right. We're talking about January 29th. They were taken to Canton PD by Officer Lang, Sergeant Lang, on January 29th. I'm just asking, well, let me ask a foundational question. Does Canton PD maintain something called evidence logs?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm not the evidence officer.
No.
There is, it's all computerized.
Right.
So like I explained earlier, when they do get logged in, the officer puts the description of the property, hits the space bar, and the computer generates an evidence number.
Right. And that evidence number is associated with just that piece of evidence.
Just that piece of evidence, correct?
And every time it's checked out or put back in, there is a log created, correct?
Yeah, they do it by computer, yes.
It's a digital fingerprint.
Correct.
All right. I mean, you're a former narco specialist, right? Mm-hmm. You did narcotics for years, right?
I did.
Drugs, about the most sensitive thing out there, right? I mean, you get a bottle of fentanyl. You're not just going to go set it on the evidence subject's desk. You're going to make sure that damn thing gets logged exactly how it's supposed to, correct?
Of course.
Because it needs to have a trace of where it goes and who touches it and who has access to it, correct?
That is correct.
You've never seen an evidence log for these items that were taken from 34 Fairview and supposedly put into the, well, not supposedly because you took them out, and
That's correct.
ultimately went into a refrigerated evidence log.
Yeah, I wouldn't have access to the evidence log. Our evidence room is a very strict process. There's only 2 people that can even have access to the permanent, once it goes into permanent evidence. And it's the admin sergeant that changes the custody when it comes out for court, if an item has to come out for court, or if it has to be transported to another agency, or if an officer needs it removed from evidence for further inspection. The admin sergeant would take care of that.
That's the way it's...
Mr. Jackson, you're not going to finish today, right?
No, I'm not.
In 2 minutes.
Two questions, and I'm also...
All right, 2 questions.
Thank you. That's the way it's supposed to work, correct?
Yes.
But you've never, as you sit here, you've never seen an evidence log determining where that blood went and who was handling it between January 29th and February 1st.
I have never seen an evidence log.
That's all I had, Robert, at least at this time.
All right.
Thank you. Mr. Gallagher, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us again. I want to ask you a quick question about what we talked about yesterday concerning your search at the scene. If we could go back to that, when you engaged the leaf blower. During the time that you were removing materials in and around the area of the flagpole going out to the, I think you called it the berm, B-E-R-M, the berm, the curb?
Yes, that was at the street. There was a 6-inch Cape Cod berm. Yes.
Okay, and that led straight to the asphalt of the street, correct?
It's basically a curbing. It's
Okay.
where the property line, the grass, the lawn meets the street.
And you were searching the area where you believed Mr. O'Keefe's body to have been found, all the way out toward that curb or berm area, correct?
Yeah, we did not go out to the berm. We did about approximately 6 by 6, 7 by 7, about 50 square feet.
50
area.
square feet. Okay, fair enough. But
Approximately.
you did say at some point, I think on direct examination, you said that you exposed the berm
Yes.
just to give you some orientation as to where the curb was, where the street was.
And if it was possible, he may have tripped and fallen, yes.
Okay. You did not recover or see a hat, a man's hat?
No, sir.
Black
no.
in color, baseball style hat?
No hat. No, sir.
You did not see or recover a man's shoe?
No, sir.
And you said you searched for the area in that 50 square foot area by removing materials, moving the snow, getting down to all the way down to the lawn.
Yes.
Okay. You did not see a single piece of bright red plastic taillight material either, did you?
No, sir. Not in that area.
As a matter of fact, you didn't see 46 pieces of taillight material, either clear or bright red plastic, in any part of the area that you searched.
No, the only thing we discovered was the blood sampling in the glass. That is correct.
Speaking of the glass, that's a good segue. You found that piece of broken drinking glass that you brought in and showed the jurors yesterday, correct?
That's correct.
Did you search the house at all to determine whether or not there was any matching glass in the home?
No, I did not.
You testified yesterday that you looked around, when you were in the house, this is the second time you're at the location, so you went back with Sergeant Lenk. I want to orient you to that time. That's when you actually entered the home for the first time of Brian Albert. Was that right?
That is correct, yes, sir.
And you indicated that you did look around the family room, the kitchen, and you didn't see any signs of a struggle or anything like that.
No, sir.
I asked you that exact question about a year ago at another proceeding. Do you recall that colloquy between the two of us?
Yes.
And at that time, I asked you, did you look around the house for any sign of a struggle or a fight? And your answer was no. Do you remember that?
Yes, I think that's out of context. I understood that question was, did I wander the house to look for any sign of a struggle? I believe you asked me if I went to asked me about a bulkhead and things of that nature.
Okay.
As I stood there, I have observations I can see.
Right.
So I think it's just a miscommunication on what type of search.
Fair
or
enough.
What type of observation.
Fair enough. Let's clear that up right now then, Mr. Gallagher. With regard to your the time that you were inside the residence, you did not seek to or ask permission to look around any place other than where you happen to be standing, which is right inside that front door of the family room, sort of adjacent to the kitchen area, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
You didn't walk into any adjacent rooms?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. You didn't walk into any, you didn't search the kitchen area?
I did not, no, sir.
You didn't look through the cabinets or anything like that?
Absolutely not, no.
You didn't look at the glassware?
Absolutely not, no.
You didn't go down to the basement? We talked about that previously.
Correct.
And-
No, absolutely not.
Okay. You didn't go out to the garage?
No, sir, no,
You didn't look around the garage?
no.
Other than walking in and basically where you just described, standing while Sergeant Lank was engaged with Miss McCabe, you didn't do anything to search the interior of that house for anything?
No, I wasn't there to search at all.
Okay. You also didn't, subsequent to that, you didn't seek or receive a search warrant?
No, I did not.
Okay. You didn't believe that it was necessary, in your mind, it was necessary to seek a search warrant to search the interior of that house?
That's absolutely correct.
You were aware at the time that you did go into the house that Sergeant Lank had earlier reported at least the possibility that John O'Keefe may have gotten into a fight, correct?
I don't recall that. We went over options on how he could have come to where he was, and an altercation certainly was one of them.
Okay, so that's fair enough. So an altercation meaning was one of the, when you say altercation, that means a physical fight, correct?
Sure.
So that was a possibility in your mind.
Everything was a possibility at that time.
And at that time, you had the information that you found, or Mr. O'Keefe's body was found on the lawn of a residence where there was alcohol, drinking, a party of some sort, or a gathering of some sort just hours earlier, correct?
That's correct, but the house had nothing to do with the incident.
At least to your mind.
That's correct, based on the evidence, yes, at that time.
And the evidence at that time was simply your communications with some, but not all, the occupants of the house, including Jennifer McCabe, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
You didn't separate any of the witnesses that were, or any of the occupants that you saw inside the house, or you came across inside the house, for instance, by taking them to the station, putting them in separate rooms so that they couldn't coordinate testimony, things of that nature?
At that time?
At that time.
So Detective Sergeant Lank was there to speak with Jennifer McCabe only.
Okay. But there were others in the house?
There were others in the house, yes.
I'm just trying to figure out whether or not you took the added step of separating those witnesses, asking those witnesses potentially to join you down at the station, putting them in separate rooms, separating those witnesses. You did not do that?
Not at that time, no.
Okay. At any time, did you?
No, we shortly thereafter, we were removed from the investigation. We removed ourselves from the investigation.
And before you were removed from the investigation, you just left the house after the conversation that Sergeant Lank had with Jennifer McCabe, correct?
Yes, after he took Jennifer McCabe's statement, we left the house, yes.
Is the reason that you didn't seek a search warrant or separate the witnesses or ask any of the potential witnesses to join you down at the station, did that have anything to do with your knowledge that the homeowner was a police officer?
Absolutely none. I've actually executed warrants on police officers' houses in the past, including police officers I personally worked with and had to charge some of their children. So that absolutely would not factor into a reason.
And it didn't factor in this case?
Absolutely not.
It did factor into your decision-making that Brian Albert was a police officer.
Absolutely not.
He didn't get any special treatment because of that.
Not by me, absolutely not.
Okay, not by you.
Not.
Okay.
I can only speak to my personal knowledge.
You were aware that, and you indicated yesterday, that the reason that Canton PD was removed from the investigation, or at least the interview section of the investigation, was because of a relationship of one of your detectives. You indicated your best detective, Kevin Albert, correct?
That's correct.
Or you gave Mr. Albert, or Detective Albert, very high praise,
He's a very good detective, yes.
and you were his direct supervisor.
I was at one point, yes.
Okay. You're aware that Kevin Albert was disciplined by the Canton Police Department for an incident occurring in July 2022, correct?
I am, yes.
Do you stand by your testimony knowing that Kevin Albert is your best detective, or was your best detective?
He's an excellent detective, yes.
You indicated that you contacted your deputy chief, Deputy Chief Gallagher, and ultimately secured some solo cups from Deputy Chief Gallagher across the street, correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
You were aware at the time that Deputy Chief Gallagher's house was adorned with a Ring video camera just over the front door, facing out toward the street and facing across the street, which would be facing 34 Fairview, correct?
That is incorrect. He does not have a Ring camera. I know that his system is an Arlo camera, and I have personal knowledge of that because we've discussed cameras because we bought them approximately the same time.
My mistake. Arlo camera, A-R-L-O.
I believe so, yes.
Okay, that's still, although it's a different brand, it's still a home personal surveillance camera, correct?
Yes, but
And you're aware that those are motion-activated cameras designed for security to capture images of things that may be going on outside the home.
that is correct, yes, sir.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Briefly.
Thank you.
Mr. Gallagher, would you take a look at that photograph that I've just handed you?
Yes,
What's it marked for ID?
It is marked for ID, and Mr. Gallagher, if you could read that for me, so it'd save me a trip up to the stand.
I believe it's a 5, Exhibit 5.
Could it be an S?
It could be an S, yes.
I think it's S, Your Honor.
I apologize.
Let me, it is S? Okay, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
I recognize the camera in the door.
Okay. Is that a shot of Deputy Chief Gallagher's, sorry.
That's okay. I know what you're asking.
Is this a shot of Deputy Chief Kelleher's front porch?
It appears to be.
Okay. Does that front porch face 34 Fairview?
We need a time frame.
I'm sorry, Your Honor?
We need a time frame.
Sure. Did you see that Arlo camera so situated when you went over there on January 29th, 2022?
I knew it was there, yes.
Okay. And is that a fair representation of what the camera looked like and its positioning, basically its positioning in January of 2022?
Yes.
Okay. Did you seek the footage? From that
No, I
camera?
didn't. I know what that camera captures.
Okay. Your Honor, with the court's permission, when we publish, actually, I'd like to mark this as evidence, next in order.
Okay?
I may approach.
Yes.
Is it 53?
May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher, do you recognize this as being the photograph that you just saw, Exhibit 53?
That is correct.
Okay. I'm going to draw your attention, and by the way, there's one amendment to this photograph. There's a redaction of the address. You see that?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to draw your attention to that area right there, which I'm
Yes.
highlighting.
Yes.
What is that?
That is the Arlo camera.
Can you orient the jurors for us, please, to what we're looking at in this photograph?
You're looking at a camera that's angled downward.
And is it the front porch of that residence directly across the street from 34 Fairview?
It is not directly across from 34. It's actually more directly across from 32, so that would be incorrect.
Okay. Is it across the street from 34 generally?
It is, if Lieutenant Gallagher's house is here, 34 is over here across the street.
Okay. Is there a view from that front porch, just generally as you're standing there, if you were to turn 180 degrees and put your back to the door, is there a view of 34 Fairview as well as 32 Fairview?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Okay. Did you seek, and we can take this down. Did you seek to secure any footage from that Arlo camera?
I did not.
From Deputy Chief Kelleher?
I did not.
Did you talk to Deputy Chief Kelleher about that footage?
I don't remember specifically.
Did you ask him whether or not he had reviewed the footage for a determination whether or not it caught any of the incident that may have occurred at or around 34 Fairview on January 29th, the early morning hours of January 29th?
I don't know if I did. I know it would not have,
How do you know it would not have?
because I know what that camera captures.
How do you know what that camera captures?
Because I've picked up packages for Deputy Chief Kelleher in the past. I know it captures his doorstep and a portion of the front lawn.
So you've reviewed the Arlo footage from his
No.
iPhone?
He's just sent me a picture. Can I pick up when he's been on vacation, can I pick up a package on the front step?
Okay. So,
Yes, I've seen it.
So you've seen screenshots that
Sure.
Deputy Chief Kelleher has sent you, correct?
I believe so, yes.
But you've never looked at the actual application to see what it might encapsulate or what it might capture generally.
We've compared what we have our cameras set up as. We had communicated about security at our houses multiple times. I know it captured the front door and a portion of the front lawn.
Do you believe that it would have been best practices to go ahead and secure that footage so we don't have to take anybody's word for it? We could actually look at the footage ourselves.
I didn't do that.
Do you think that would have been best practices to do that, just to have belt and suspenders? So there's no question about whether or not that camera that's facing, at least it's facing directly across the street, might have captured something of interest on the morning of January 29th, 2022.
To me, there was no expectation that it had captured anything, so I didn't think it was practical.
So because of your expectation, you didn't seek the footage and you didn't secure the footage.
Because of my knowledge and expectation, yes.
And you now know that that footage is gone. It's overwritten.
I would assume so. I'm not familiar with how long Arlo keeps footage.
So you are familiar enough that you decided that it wasn't important to capture the footage, but you're not familiar enough to know whether or not the footage is actually saved onto the Arlo system?
I don't know anything about it. I don't have Arlo cameras, so I don't know anything about
So
the
you don't-
system. But
Okay.
I have Blink, so we've compared our systems. So I'm not really sure what you're asking.
So you don't have an Arlo system.
I have Blink, correct.
You're not familiar with how Arlo works, correct?
Correct.
You're not familiar with the total array of where the cameras might capture versus what might be captured on your phone app, or that you can say, like, push a button that says packages or people, and it narrows the focus of the camera? You're not aware of that?
I'm not aware of that, no.
Okay. But you would have been aware of that if you had captured the footage and simply said to Deputy Chief Kelleher, I'd like that Ring footage for that 24-hour period.
Okay, it's not Ring. And
I'm sorry, that Arlo footage for a 24-hour period.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Did Deputy Chief Kelleher get any special treatment from you because he's a police officer?
No.
Did Deputy Chief Kelleher get any special treatment from you because he was your boss?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. You know Brian Higgins.
I do.
How do you know him?
Brian Higgins is a special agent with the ATF.
How long have you known him?
I first became aware of Brian Higgins probably around 2016, 2017, when I was with the DEA and we were working a Title III investigation, which is a wiretap investigation into gang activity, drug distribution in the Boston, Brockton area. I never had any personal contact with him at that time. He was just an agent in the group I was working for.
Ultimately, did that professional relationship seep into more of a personal relationship as well?
It did. So I think it was 2018 or 2019, the ATF had a satellite office at Canton PD, and he was one of the special agents that was assigned, yes.
So he actually officed in the brick and mortar location of Canton PD?
Yes, he did.
And did he maintain that office all the way through January of 2022?
He did, yes.
And during the course of your interaction with Mr. Higgins, did you become friendly with Mr. Higgins?
I've become friendly with Mr. Higgins, yes. Most of my coworkers I'm friendly with.
Is it safe to say that you socialized at times with Mr. Higgins?
I have, yes.
Okay. You've shared cocktails with Mr. Higgins?
Yes.
Shared meals with Mr. Higgins?
Yes.
Okay. So it is safe to say that you have both a professional and a personal relationship with Mr. Higgins,
Yes, I do.
and you consider him a good friend.
Yes, I do.
You were aware, Mr. Gallagher, that he was at 34 Fairview on January 29th, those early morning hours, during the course of the time when John O'Keefe went to 34 Fairview.
I'm sorry, can you repeat
Sure.
that question?
You're aware that Mr. Higgins was at 34 Fairview in the home at the time that John O'Keefe went to 34 Fairview on January 29th, 2022.
By the time I became aware of it was afterwards, yes.
Okay. That's what I mean.
Yes,
I know
yes.
you weren't aware of it at the moment, but
Right, okay.
you became aware of it.
Later on, yes.
Okay. When did you become aware of it?
I'm not sure. It was after we were, I'm not really sure.
It was during the time that you were dispatched over to Brian Albert's house to ultimately either begin the investigation or go into the home with Sergeant Lank and interview with people there, correct?
No, that wasn't the time, no.
Didn't you say in a report to Lieutenant Tully that when you went over to Brian Albert's house that Brian Higgins was not there?
I don't recall Brian Higgins being there.
Right. So what I'm trying to register is whether or not you knew at the time that you went to Brian Albert's house, at least that second time, that you might or might not have expected to see Brian Higgins there because you knew he was at the home when John O'Keefe arrived there the night before.
Can you rephrase that question? I'm not following you.
Sure. When you went back to, in other words, during the time that you were investigating and joining Sergeant Lank
Yes.
back over at Brian Albert's house, you knew that Brian Higgins had been somehow in that home the night before.
I don't believe I did at that time.
When do you think you learned that?
Sometime afterwards, probably when I saw the list and reviewed the narratives of the officers.
Would that have been days or weeks later?
No, it probably would have been, within 24 hours or so.
Okay, within 24 hours of your involvement.
Correct.
Okay,
yes.
that's what I was trying to get to.
Okay,
Thank
I
you for that.
apologize.
My bad.
No.
Bad questioning on my part. So within 24 hours of your involvement, which would have been, your involvement was the early morning hours of January 29th.
That's correct.
Correct? Within 24 hours of that, you knew Brian Higgins was somehow tangentially involved or collaterally involved as a potential witness, if nothing else.
I'm not sure he was a witness to anything. I was aware that he attended the house at 34 Fairview after they left the bar.
Right. And you said, well, I'm not sure he was a witness to anything. The one way to figure out whether or not someone is a witness to anything is to actually formally interview them, correct?
That's absolutely correct.
Which you did not do.
We were removed from the investigation before I found out Brian Higgins was involved.
Okay, so you were
So
removed.
I wouldn't be interviewing him.
You were removed, and then it was within a few hours of that you realized that Brian Higgins was somehow involved.
Not a few hours. No, I said it was within 24 hours probably.
Okay. You're aware that Mr. Higgins not only had a office at Canton PD, he also had a key card for Canton PD.
Yes, he did.
Explain for the jurors what a key card or an access card at Canton PD means. What is that? What is a key card for Canton PD?
So it's a secure building. I think we've all seen it. You have square boxes with the red light. The key card allows you access into the building. And depending upon your rank, you have different rights. Each individual has different rights to enter different areas.
You had, for instance, being a top-level Canton lieutenant, you had a key card that was probably the functional equivalent of a master key card. You could get in pretty much any place you wanted.
Absolutely not.
Okay, where could you go?
It's easier if I say where I can't go.
That probably
would that
is
be,
easier.
Would that
Yeah.
be work?
Explain that.
So I can't go to the armory, which is where weapons are kept and ammunition is kept, and I can't go into permanent evidence.
Okay. You're aware that Brian Higgins had a key card.
Yes, I am.
And that access card gave him access to pretty much, with the exception of the armory, possibly the evidence room, and what was the other location?
I think that's what I said, the evidence room
Okay.
and the armory.
With the exception of those, you're aware that Brian Higgins' key card gave him access basically to the entirety of the Canton Police Department?
Well, so I want to specify, I don't specifically know what Brian Higgins had rights to, but there are also parts of our department that are secured by key locks that he wouldn't have access to, and I don't have access to as well, offices and things of that nature.
I want to focus your attention on the Sally Port, if I
Okay.
could. You can enter the Sally Port, which is a fancy name for a garage, correct?
It certainly is, yes.
Okay. You can enter that from the outside, meaning out in the elements. You come from a parking lot adjacent to or that services the Sally Port. You can enter from there, correct?
Yes, there's one pedestrian door on the main entrance side, and it's for location purposes. It's right beside the garage door that's marked number 4.
And the garage door is one of those big roll-up, industrial-style roll-up doors that comes up and down?
That is correct.
And then you can also enter the Sally Port from inside Canton PD, correct?
There are 2 locations you can enter the Sally Port from inside, yes.
And Brian Higgins' key card gave him access to both of those locations, the pedestrian portal going into the Sally Port from outside, as well as the pedestrian portal from inside Canton PD.
That would be correct.
Okay. Speaking of the Sally Port, you were, if not the person, one of the people who let Massachusetts State Police into the Sally Port on February 1st, 2022 to process the black SUV, correct? The Lexus.
I'm not sure if I was the one that gave them access, but like I said, I've testified to. I certainly would have.
Okay. That SUV had actually arrived on January 29th, 2022, 3 days earlier. Is that right?
I believe so, sometime after 5 or 6. I'm
So
not
it
sure of
was
the time.
in the Sally Port from January 29th all the way to February 1st, at least to your knowledge, for 3 full days in the Sally Port, correct?
2.5 to 3, yes.
Okay. From the time it arrived at Canton PD until it was processed out and moved out of the Sally Port, how many people would have had physical access to that SUV?
Everybody that possessed a key card.
And that's basically everybody at Canton PD that is a sworn officer, correct?
That is correct, yes,
Maybe
sir.
even some civilians, correct?
I'm not sure of the civilians. What civilian?
But do y'all have non-sworn civilians that
We don't.
negotiate things?
No, we do not. Well, we do, but I'm not sure whether they would have access, what their access is.
So at least the entirety of the police department, the sworn police department, correct?
The uniformed police, yes.
As well as Brian Higgins, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you. Oh, by the way, can I go back to something?
Sure.
When you were at 34 Fairview, when you walked in with Sergeant Lank, you walked in through the side door or the main door?
Side door.
Side door into the family room, correct?
I believe it's a family room, yes.
Walked into the kitchen, correct?
I was by the kitchen.
Adjacent to the
Yep.
kitchen. Did you see a dog?
I did not.
Speaking of the Sally Port, I want to move back to the Sally Port. I apologize about bouncing around a little bit.
Perfectly fine.
Moving back to the Sally Port, you indicated that basically all the uniformed officers, every single uniformed officer at Canton PD would have had access to that Sally Port, as well as Brian Higgins. They also would have had access to everything inside the Sally Port, whatever was left there.
Yes.
The SUV and other stuff, for lack of a better technical phrase, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you photograph or did you cause to be photographed the SUV when it arrived on January 29th in your Sally Port?
But we had been recused at that point, and I wasn't working when the vehicle arrived. So
I thought you said that you were recused only from doing interviews.
from doing investigative interviews, but I wasn't working when the vehicle came in.
Okay. So you could have taken photographs of the vehicle had you wanted to, or caused someone to do that had you wanted to.
I had no idea that vehicle was coming to Canton PD, sir.
Okay. Once you got to, as the lieutenant in charge at the scene, was it important to you to know that a seminal piece of evidence had been moved into the custody and control of Canton PD?
It wasn't important to me. It's the state police investigation.
Even though it was on your property, in your Sally Port, with access through your key cards.
That's up to my chief. That's not up to me.
I see. To your knowledge, let me just ask it this way. To your knowledge, did anybody seek to photograph the vehicle when it arrived at Canton PD on January 29th, 2022, to your knowledge?
I have no personal knowledge of that.
Have you ever seen a photograph of that vehicle that was taken by someone in law enforcement on January 29th? I'm going to give you 3 days. January 29th, January 30th, January 31st, 30th, or February 1st.
I have seen photographs. I'm not sure what days they were taken, the photos were taken.
You have not seen a photograph that was taken on January 29th, however, have you?
I've never seen anything dated January 29th.
You've never seen a photo, and I'm going to go through this a little bit more. You've never seen a photograph that was taken on January 30th, have you?
Yeah, I have never seen any photographs with any dates on them,
Okay.
I believe.
Do you think that would have been, you were at the time the head of detectives, correct?
No, that's not correct.
You were not? You had already moved from that spot?
I
In January of 2022, I may be wrong. I thought,
You are wrong.
as the
It's,
lieutenant, you were also the head of detectives.
No, that was Lieutenant Gallagher at the time. I know it's a mix-up. So we've had promotions since January 29th, and I think that's where the mix-up might be.
So he was a
when
lieutenant
you
at the
refer to
time.
Deputy Chief Gallagher, he was actually Lieutenant Gallagher, and he was in charge of detectives at that time.
At some point, had you been in charge of detectives?
I became in charge of detectives in June of 2022.
June of 2022.
Yeah, approximately 6 months later.
Understood. You had been a detective previously, however.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
As a detective, do you believe that it would have been important to photograph, had you had your druthers to do it, it would have been important to photograph that vehicle when it came in so that it could be memorialized and documented the exact condition that vehicle came in on January 29th, 2022?
So this is important to know that, unfortunately, John O'Keefe was deceased at this time. Once John O'Keefe becomes deceased, it becomes the state police's investigation, the Norfolk County District Attorney CPAC investigation. That's why it is not our investigation. It's up to the investigating agency to make those decisions.
Even something as uninvasive as taking photographs?
Yes.
Okay. You would agree, as a former detective and former head of detectives, that there are protocols for securing evidence of all types, correct?
Correct.
Those protocols dictate that not only is evidence properly secured, once it's seized, it needs to be properly secured, and it needs to be separated from other evidence to avoid something known as cross-contamination, correct?
Correct.
And you would agree with me that that is paramount in evidence handling in any investigation, correct?
Yes.
And that's because once evidence is cross-contaminated, its integrity basically collapses, right?
That's correct.
It's especially true of biological material, is that right?
Yes.
Because biological material, like a shovel, the biological material on the shovel becomes hyper sensitive. It's hyper important. It can be cross-contaminated with other items.
Sure.
And it can tell an incorrect story, correct?
Yes.
It could tell, if there's cross-contamination, it could tell a false story.
It's been done, yes.
And DNA, obviously, we're talking about biological material. The most sensitive of all the biological material is DNA evidence, right?
What do you mean sensitive?
So it might take some effort to move saliva from one item to another. It takes almost no effort to move DNA from one item to another and to detect it. You understand what I'm saying? The sensitivity of the detection
No, I don't understand what you're saying.
You understand that I could touch this podium and you might not get my fingerprint off of it?
Correct.
Might not, correct?
Might not.
What do you think about getting my DNA off that podium that I
Yes.
just touched? You're absolutely going to get it, right?
Yes,
Yeah. That's what I mean by sensitivity.
Okay.
You would agree that DNA is hypersensitive.
I would agree that DNA is better than fingerprints, yes.
I'd like you to take a look at a series of photographs if we could. Can I approach John?
Yes.
Okay. There are 4 photographs, Mr. Gallagher, that I'd like you to look at briefly and familiarize yourself with if you can. Mr.
I'm all
Gallagher, do
set.
you recognize what's depicted in those photographs?
I do.
How do you recognize what's depicted in each one of those? There's 4 of them in front of you. Just generally, how do you recognize what's depicted in those photographs?
Generally, I know this is the exchange of custody from the Canton Police to the Massachusetts State Police.
Are those taken inside the Sally Port, to your knowledge?
They are, yes.
Some of those photographs include the SUV,
One SUV picture, yes.
and some of those photographs include the blood evidence that you've earlier described, the solo cups, the Stop and Shop bag. correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
May I approach?
Yes.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to have these marked as next in order.
Are there any objections, Mr. Brennan?
No objection, thank you.
Exhibits 54 through 57.
May I approach?
Yes.
Thank you. Permission to publish, Your Honor?
Okay.
I'd like to start with what's been marked as 54. It shows a license plate. Do you recognize what's depicted in this photograph?
Yes, based on the location, the vehicle, the broken taillight, I believe that's Ms. Reed's vehicle.
And do you know when this photograph was taken?
I do not.
Do you believe it was taken between January 29th and February 1st?
Yes.
But you don't know when it was taken?
No, I don't have personal knowledge, no.
I just want to draw your attention very briefly, just to orient us, to this area on the bottom right-hand corner. Do you see that, what looks like a white rag on the ground?
Yes, based on the pictures, I think it might be a paper towel, but yes.
Okay. If we could look at the next photograph, which is 55, looks like a paper bag. Do you recognize what's depicted in this photograph?
Yes,
What is that?
that's the Stop and Shop bag that contained the 6 samples.
Do you see the rag in that photograph as well?
Yeah, we could call it, agree to call it a rag or
You
paper
think it's a
towel.
paper towel?
I'm not sure. It looks like a paper towel on the picture, in the pictures, but it's a white object, yes.
For all I care, it's the white thing. That's
Yes.
fine. All right. And do you see that that's next to a tire just at the top of the picture? Just for
Yeah,
orientation purposes?
Yeah, it appears to be 18 to 2 feet, 18 inches to 24 inches behind the tire, yes.
Okay. And that, of course, is the tire of the SUV.
Yes, I would think
So
so.
that would be the right rear of the SUV, just a few inches from this bag, correct?
It would be a couple of feet from the bag, yes.
Okay. If we could take a look at the next photograph. This is Exhibit 56 for the record. What's depicted inside the bag?
The red solo cups.
And you still see the rag in the photograph.
I sure do, yes.
So the SUV would be right here, correct? At the top of the left
Well, I
front.
can't see the top of it. It would be, it's nearby, yes.
Okay. And it's not just nearby, it's the right rear of the SUV that's nearby, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And one final photograph. This is Exhibit 57 for the record. What is inside that? What's depicted inside that bag?
The red solo cups with coagulated blood.
And these are the only, we can have the lights, please. And so if you take that down. These are the only photographs that we have or that you've ever seen of those red solo cups, that Stop and Shop bag, and the biological material in those red solo cups.
The only ones I have seen, yes.
And those photographs that you see are within 2.5 feet from the right rear of that SUV, correct?
Approximately, yes.
And the right rear of that SUV houses the taillight material, correct? Or the taillight
The
area.
tail light area, yes.
The cups were not sealed, correct?
The cups were not sealed.
The bag was not sealed, was it?
As far as I know, what do you mean by sealed?
Yesterday you brought a box in. You remember that?
Yes,
That box had tape on it.
that's correct.
What color was the tape?
Red.
Why is the tape red?
It can be red, it can be blue. I mean, evidence tape is different colors.
Normally, in your experience, red evidence tape is used to formally seal evidence bags or evidence containers, correct?
Yes,
That's because it highlights to the eye a visual cue. Hey, that's important. It's been sealed. It's got bright red tape on it, correct?
correct.
Oftentimes, that tape has additional information on it as well, correct?
You could have initials on it of who put the tape on, yes.
Right. In other words, it might say evidence, correct? Might be pre-printed with the word
Pre-printed,
evidence.
yes, correct.
And it may have a place for initials to be.
Correct.
And one of the reasons that you initial it is because if someone takes a razor blade and cuts through, or a knife and cuts through that tape, those initials are cut through. It has to be retaped and reinitialed, correct?
That is correct.
That is a basic protocol for chain of custody, is it not?
Yes,
And that's to maintain the care, custody, and control and the integrity over the items and the items inside the evidence container, whatever they may be.
that's correct.
Whether they are biological material, physical items of evidence, a document, whatever.
Correct.
None of that was done with what we just saw, correct?
Correct.
We've agreed already that the blood was stored in non-sterile solo cups, correct?
Correct.
We've agreed that those cups were not sealed. The cups themselves were not sealed. There was no cap. There was no plastic, plasticine, saran wrap, nothing put over the cups, correct?
That is correct.
So they were open.
Yes,
They were not in an evidence bag. They were in a grocery bag, correct?
they were, yes.
Yesterday on direct examination, it may have been on cross-examination, Mr. Gallagher, I don't remember, you said, I have no idea where Sergeant Lang got that grocery bag, correct?
I don't know where the bag came from, no.
Could have come out of his back of his car seat, correct?
I'm assuming it came out of one of the cars, yes.
No idea what had been in that bag previous to those cups with blood being in the bag,
I
correct?
have no personal knowledge of that.
And obviously that bag, it goes without saying, is not a forensically sterile item either, correct?
Most bags are not sterilized.
And not only the cups were not sealed, the bag that the cups were in was not sealed.
They were only closed, correct.
You will agree that having unsealed and unsecured biological material, specifically blood material, situated right next to the right rear quarter panel of that SUV would not be within normal protocols for securing evidence, correct?
This was in the hands of a criminalist. It was an exchange of custody. I don't have any issue with it.
You don't know, you have no personal knowledge of where that bag had been or where the cups had been previous to that photograph being taken.
Correct.
You will agree that having unsealed and unsecured blood right next to the right rear of the SUV is a recipe for cross-contamination, wouldn't you?
Not in the hands of a trained criminalist, I wouldn't know.
Well, generally speaking, there were other people there that weren't the trained criminals, right?
There was a photographer who took the pictures,
Who's not a trained criminalist.
correct. But the cups weren't in his hands. It was in the criminalist's hands. Those are the criminalist's hands you see gloved in that photo.
That's not my question. My question is, there was unsealed blood and in an unsealed bag for how much time, you don't know, sitting right there by the right rear of that SUV, correct?
No, I do know,
How do you know?
because I'm the one that brought the bag with the criminalists to that area. They photographed it, documented it, and then they transferred it to their plastic containers.
And before you grabbed that bag, you don't know where that bag had been for 3 days hence, 3 days before.
I know it had been in the temporary evidence room in a refrigerator.
You actually never saw it in the temporary evidence room in the refrigerator until February 1st, did you?
I don't recall.
So you don't know where that bag had been. You don't know who had handled those cups before you pulled them out of that temporary evidence locker, correct?
I have no personal knowledge if anybody else, I have no personal knowledge. I took them out of the refrigerator. That's all I can testify to.
Do you remember us talking about this about a year ago?
Yes,
And I asked you, would you agree that having unsealed and unsecured blood next to the right rear portion of the SUV is a recipe for cross-contamination? I asked you that question.
you did.
And you said, if I can speak to this incident alone, and I asked, that's a yes or no question?
That is correct.
Do you remember that?
Yes,
And you said, well, it's not a yes or no, but for your purposes, I would say yes.
correct.
So it is, at least in your mind, a recipe for potential cross-contamination, correct?
Not in this particular situation, which was clarified later on.
Although you did say yes in answer
Hypothetically,
to my
anything,
question.
hypothetically, anything is possible, yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's all I have.
All right, Mr. Brennan?
May I?
Right ahead, yes.
Lieutenant Gallagher, you mentioned that one of your colleagues who lived on Fairview Road had an owl camera.
Had an Arlo camera, yes.
That day or that morning when you went to Fairview and looked around where Mr. O'Keefe's, where you were directed Mr. O'Keefe's body was, were you aware that that gentleman had a camera?
Yes,
You shared with us that you had familiarity with the angle of that camera. Do you have any information whatsoever that he or anybody on his behalf used the phone to change the camera angle?
no, I don't.
Do you know if that camera could even reach the street if you wanted to?
I'm not sure.
Do you have any information that there are applications or different things you can do to the camera to move it remotely? Is there any evidence or information you have?
No,
When you decided not to ask him about the camera, was that based on anything other than your already familiarity and knowledge of the angle that camera was set?
no,
At any time he's ever shown you, you've ever seen clips from that camera, were they consistently showing the same area, or did it change over time?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow it.
they were the same.
In your mind, why didn't you go seek footage from that camera?
In my mind,
Yes.
because I knew it wouldn't have captured anything. I also know that they're motion-activated cameras, and he didn't have them on the street because it's a busy street, and the batteries would die in them, and who knows, very quickly if they captured the street.
You said that's a very busy street. Are you familiar with Fairview Road?
Yes,
Is that a road, is that a public road?
it's a public way in the town of Canton, yes.
As a public way in the town of Canton, do you know who operates and cleans and monitors that road? Who's responsible for that?
Yes, the Department of Public Works for the town of Canton.
You were asked about a claim of a fight. Did any witness ever suggest to you that Mr. O'Keefe had been in a fight?
No,
When you first learned about Mr. O'Keefe, did you get a chance to actually look at his body?
no, I did not.
Did you get a chance to look at his wounds?
No, I did not.
Did you get a chance to examine his clothing and whether there was any trace evidence left behind?
I'll allow it.
No, I did not.
Early in an investigation, when investigators have no information, Is it common to speculate?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
What is the natural process for an investigator when you start upon a situation and know nothing about what happened?
In this particular case, we came up with scenarios that possibly could have brought John to that spot. And we were focused on trying to find out and hopefully getting to the hospital. Hopefully the can't fight department in the hospital would save his life and he could tell us how he got to where he was.
Was that anything beyond the surmise or speculation of detectives, or did that information come from a witness?
No, that was us, I guess you would call it spitballing on possibilities.
Did you ever come across a witness that said that this was, or Mr. O'Keefe's injuries were the result of a fight?
No, we did not.
If we could play Exhibit 51, please. I want to ask you some questions about the area you searched where you were directed Mr. O'Keefe was. Stop it there, please, Ms. Gilman. You did not see exactly where John O'Keefe was when he was found?
No, I did not.
Who directed you to this area?
I was directed twice, first by Sergeant Good and then by Sergeant Lang, Detective Sergeant Lang.
You shared with us yesterday you were looking in that area where you thought John O'Keefe was found.
Correct.
You asked questions about a berm. Is that the separation between the street and the yard?
Yes, it is.
Did you clear off a piece of that berm?
We did.
And the reason was?
We wanted to see what was there. We didn't know what was there.
Did you do a search from the flagpole all the way to the street?
No,
Did you do a search of that flagpole across the front yard?
no,
Did you do a search from that flagpole all across the berm all the way down the line?
no. It was approximately 15 to 18 inches
And why such a limited search?
because we had no other reason than it was a medical call at this time.
Did you see snow in other parts of the yard?
Yes, the entire yard was covered.
And other than Officer Lang's footprints across the front of the yard, no other footprints?
There were no other footprints.
Any other visible signs that anything was moved or dragged across that side or front lawn?
No, not at all.
Any doggy prints in the snow?
No, not at all.
You were asked whether you sought a search warrant. Is there a difference between a witness and an eyewitness?
Yes,
You were asked questions about people in the home, and they were characterized as witnesses. Did you have any information that anybody inside that home was a witness to what happened to Mr. O'Keefe?
no,
Did you have any information when you made these decisions about search warrants? Did you have any information from anybody, anywhere, that Mr. O'Keefe ever stepped 1 foot inside that home?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow it.
Maybe briefly.
Briefly, can we turn the lights on, Mr. Brennan?
Yes, please. And you can take that down, Ms. Bennett. Thank you. May I?
Yes.
As a lifelong law enforcement officer, have you obtained search warrants before?
Yes.
Have you obtained search warrants for homes?
Yes, many times.
Is there a certain requirement before you obtain a search warrant for a home?
Yes, critical legal standards, yes.
And what is that?
Probable cause.
And for us, what does that mean, probable cause?
So probable cause is a reasonable belief that a crime has been committed or evidence of a crime can be found in a specific location.
Can you obtain a search warrant if you do not have a reasonable belief that evidence exists somewhere?
No, you cannot.
Is there a process in getting a search warrant? Can you just walk in a home and say, I have a search warrant, or do you have to do something?
You have to write an affidavit in good faith, swearing before the court that all your information is accurate and truthful, and present the facts, circumstances, witness statements that would make you believe that there was a reason to violate your Fourth Amendment constitutional right.
When you walked into Fairview that morning with Sergeant Lang, did you have a search warrant?
No, I did not.
Did you have any reason to get a search warrant?
No reason at all.
When you walked in, were you invited?
Yes.
Did anybody prevent you from coming in?
No, not
Did
at all.
anybody ever ask you to leave?
No, not at all.
When you spoke to Mr. Albert, did he ever discontinue or end the conversation?
No.
Were you doing any favors for anybody that morning?
No, of course not.
If you had probable cause to search anywhere that morning, would you have?
Absolutely.
You were asked questions about memorializing your efforts when you were in the area of Mr. O'Keefe's body. And you were asked about written reports. Are there other ways to memorialize efforts other than writing a report?
Yes.
You videotaped, or you had Sergeant Good videotape your search?
That is correct.
Who told him to do that?
I did.
Why did you tell him to do that?
Because I want it, in case it ever became an issue, I wasn't familiar with it being used before. I wanted people to understand how effective it was.
Do you know whether or not the police cars have dash cams?
They do, yes.
Do you know if any of the police cars had dash cams that day?
3 of them did, yes.
You mentioned that at some point you learned that Mr. O'Keefe had passed.
I'm not sure when we found that out, but yes.
Is there a statute or a rule when there is a death, whether a local county keeps the case or it needs to be transferred?
It's transferred, yes.
Is there a rule, or is that a policy of the Canton Police Department?
It's a rule.
You were asked about Alexis and the Sally Port.
Correct.
Do you know exactly what time that Alexis was brought to the Sally Port?
I don't have any personal knowledge of that.
You asked about a broken taillight. Have or had you reviewed any of the dash cams from the Canton Police Department that day?
Not that day, no.
You were asked about cross-contamination with the cups. When you brought the cups to the criminalist, where did you give them to him or her?
I carried them down to, we walked together, I carried them down to the Sally Port.
Did you see anybody using a white rag or a paper towel to dip it in to any of the cups?
No.
Did you see anybody shaking the cups or splashing?
No, they were handled very carefully.
Sustained is
Did you see anything that would cause you concern that there was some type of purposeful or inadvertent contamination or transfer?
Absolutely not.
And you've been trained.
Yes.
Did you see anything during that time that caused you any concern about the potential corruption of evidence?
No, I had complete faith in the criminalist.
May I approach you, Honor?
yes.
There is a box for identification that has a glass in it. I'd like to make that into evidence.
Jimmy?
I'll do it later then.
Is there any objection, Mr. Jackson, any objection to?
Yeah, just
Okay.
no objection, Your Honor, thank you.
All right, so we can put it in at any time then? And then
At any
when
time.
Mr. McDermott comes back
Thank you.
with it?
The glass that you showed the jury yesterday, when you showed it to us yesterday, did it look any differently than when you recovered it from the ground where you were looking that morning?
No,
Did you have any information that that glass came from inside Fairview Road?
no.
Do you know where that glass came from?
I have no personal knowledge where that glass came from.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Very briefly, Your Honor, you indicated that you were spitballing, to use your word, correct?
Correct,
Trying to figure out what happened.
correct.
That's the job of an investigator, correct?
That is correct,
You
yes,
don't
sir.
just take witnesses' words for things, do you?
That is correct.
You have to corroborate things.
Yes,
You have to look deeper,
yes,
ask more questions,
absolutely.
actually investigate.
That's why we're here today.
You don't rule out anything or anyone
We
right
didn't-
off the bat, correct?
Correct. and we
No
did not.
one is ruled out. Nothing is ruled out, correct?
That is correct, yes.
You follow where the evidence leads you, period, amen.
Absolutely.
You didn't seek, to separate the occupants at 34 Fairview, correct?
No,
You didn't interview Brian Albert formally, did you?
I did not, no.
You were asked by Mr. Brennan, did he ever end the conversation precipitously? Did he end it earlier, anything like that? He didn't end any interview because he wasn't interviewed, correct?
That is correct.
You didn't interview Brian Higgins.
That is correct.
You wouldn't interview Brian Higgins because he's your personal friend, correct?
Correct.
But you didn't have anybody else interview him either, did you?
Again, we're talking, I think we've gone over this, and maybe you didn't understand. I didn't know Brian Higgins was at the house at that time.
Because you didn't ask anybody else who was at the house at that time.
I wasn't talking to anybody at that house, correct?
Might have been a good idea, wouldn't it?
Not at that time. We were there for one specific reason. We wanted to get to the hospital. So, no.
Might have been a
I
good
disagree.
idea to sit Mr. Albert down and say, there, you're shaking your head again. I'm not done with my question. Might have been a good idea, Mr. Gallagher, since you happen to be there, no sweat off your brow, to sit Mr. Albert down and say, by the way, I got a pen and a paper. Who was here last night, just before John O'Keefe was found dead on your lawn? Who was here? Might have been a good idea, correct?
So that was already done by Detective Sergeant Lank, and it was documented in his report of everybody of what Mr. Jackson is asking.
Then how did you two not know that Brian Higgins was there?
I don't know where.
At
I
34
mean, I'm confused. At what time?
Right.
At what time?
Exactly.
At what time?
When John O'Keefe arrived
Okay.
at 34 Fairview after midnight on January 29th, 2022.
So when I discovered Brian Higgins was there, wasn't until I read the report.
If you were standing in the house, Sergeant Blank, you just told these jurors knew that Brian Higgins and everybody else was there
He had obtained the names. He hadn't written the report yet.
and hadn't told his boss,
I don't recall.
even though you two went together to interview yet another witness?
That's correct. There was a very fast-moving scene and pace. That is correct.
While you were spitballing, you also didn't secure the camera footage that we've talked about, the Arlo footage.
Yes, that's correct.
You also didn't formally search the house, correct?
Absolutely
We
correct.
just talked about that. You didn't seek consent by Brian, pardon me, by Brian Albert to search the house, correct?
That's correct.
You also didn't seek a search warrant. You talked about that, correct?
Correct.
You don't get punished or in trouble if you seek a search warrant and a judge who has to sign the search warrant. Normal citizens can't do that. It requires a judge's signature. You don't get in trouble or get spanked or get slapped or get fined if you seek a search warrant that is denied, correct?
In this particular situation, I would need to articulate facts, certain circumstances, and witness statements. What I had was nobody could put John O'Keefe in the house, including Miss Reed, and that we had a glass where they were coming from a bar, and I had 3 separate police officers, including myself, that had been in that house on 3 separate occasions and saw nothing amiss. I have a good faith obligation to present the truth to a judge, and if I don't, I can be found, end up on a Brady list or a Giglio list, as you know, and my credibility to testify in my career is basically over. So yes, you can get in trouble.
You're talking about lying in an affidavit, sir.
I'm talking about misleading.
Correct.
I would have to twist circumstances to have the right to search Brian Albert's house. We had no reason, and there's been no reason since.
How about this? How about this? There's a dead guy on the lawn that looked like he potentially could have been in a physical altercation. How about that? Might that be of some concern to go inside the house and see if there was a struggle that started in the house?
There's still no evidence to go into the house.
You're the guy that's out on the lawn with no coat on. You think the coat might be inside the house? That might be a reasonable assumption? Yes or no?
No.
You got a guy outside with no shoe on. You think the shoe might be inside the house? That might be a reasonable assumption?
I never saw Mr. O'Keefe. I wasn't aware that he
Because you didn't
have his
seek
shoes.
to find out the details. Other people knew every single fact that I've just suggested at the time you walked in the house, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
The fact is you didn't seek a search warrant.
I wouldn't. Correct.
The fact is you never searched the house.
That's correct.
The fact is you never searched the basement.
That's correct.
The fact is you never searched the garage.
That's correct.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Have you ever learned one fact that would have justified searching that house?
Not to this day.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained is to form, and you can put the glass in right now, Mr. Vernon.
Thank you. Move that into evidence, please.
Exhibit 58.
All right, Lieutenant, you're all set, sir.
Thank you.